The families in the lawsuit against Alex Jones are demanding $2.75 trillion, which is just about the GDP of France, from one guy, Alex Jones. Because what? It's just, we're in wacky Wally World levels of nonsense. The children are in charge. Nothing makes sense. This is ridiculous. Maybe Alex Jones will appeal and this will actually get resolved, but I kind of just feel like the whole system is imploding. Like the children the inmates are running the asylum. The next story that we'll be talking about is Steve Bannon getting 4 months in prison for contempt of Congress, which once again, it's a question of the Constitution and executive privilege, and there's an argument to be made over an administrative issue to sentence the man to prison. I find silly, but he's not going to prison pending appeal, so we'll see how all of that plays out. We'll talk about that. Plus, there's this viral story, the guy in Waukesha who rammed all those innocent people. Oh boy, when you see how the media is writing about this guy, a weeping man with two sides to every story. There's a viral meme going around where when it was Kyle Rittenhouse, they mocked and belittled him. But when it's this guy, they're like, well, two sides to every story. He weeps. We'll talk about all that. Before we get started, my friends, head over to StrongerBonesAndLife.com to pick up your ageless multi-collagen. You need collagen for your joints, your hair, your skin, your nails, to keep your bones nice and strong. I've really messed up my wrist because I keep just slamming on it. But you know what? It's fine because I'm consuming this. Had some of my coffee the other day. Actually, I really do enjoy it. It's good. You need it if you want to stay healthy. So StrongerBonesAndLife.com, and you will get a 60-day money-back guarantee. The healthy aging support of collagen in its ideal forms. 5 key types of collagen you need from 4 different sources. And for every order today, BioTrust will donate a nutritious meal to a hungry child in your honor through their partnership with NoKidHungry.org. To date, BioTrust has provided over 5 million meals to hungry kids. Please help them hit their goal of 6 million meals this year. It's non-GMO and free of artificial colors, flavors, preservatives, and sweeteners, and free of gluten, antibiotics, and RBGH and RBST. Nearly no odor or taste, unlike bone broth. No clumping, none at all. You'll get free shipping with every order and free VIP live health and fitness coaching from BioTrust's team of expert nutrition and health coaches for life with every order. That alone, I got to be honest, that just sounds insane. You buy it one time and then they'll talk with you on the phone about your health whenever. That's awesome. You'll also get their free e-report, the 14 foods for amazing skin with every order. So again, StrongerBonesAndLife.com. Thanks for sponsoring the show, BioTrust. And don't forget to head over to Timcast.com, become a member to support our work directly by clicking that Join Us button. We got field reporters. I believe we're sending a field reporter on the ground to Matt Walsh's big rally in Tennessee. So I'm super excited for that. I'm super proud we're able to do that. Shout out to Elad Eliyahu, who's been doing field reporting for us. I believe he will be covering this. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe it'll be someone else. But it's because you guys are members, we're able to do this. You'll also get access to the uncensored members only show, Cast Castle, Tales from the Inverted World. We got more shows coming. So smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Joining us tonight to talk about all this and more is Austin Petersen.
Thanks for having me back, guys.
Who are you?
I'm the host of the Wake Up America show, a lifelong Missourian, and just a freedom fighter, all around libertarian, hardcore, fighter for truth, justice, and the American way.
Hey, right on, just like Superman. Thanks for hanging out. This should be fun. We also got Luke Rutkowski.
Oh, great. It's the guy who says you can't sell heroin to a 5-year-old.
Boo!
You party pooper. Anyway, my name's Luke Rutkowski. I had to say that. I'm sorry, Austin.
No, it's all right. It's all right.
My name is Luke Rutkowski of We Are Change.org. Today I'm wearing a t-shirt with an updated New York state flag, which I think perfectly represents it more accurately, with people running away from it saying, F this place. If you like this shirt, you could get it on thebestpoliticalshirts.com. Because you do, I'm here. Thank you again so much for having me.
It's Ian Crossland in the house, your favorite free software advocate. Austin, great to see you again, as always, man.
You too, Ian.
Love you, brother. And Luke, thanks, dude. Nice t-shirt.
Thank you.
What's going on, Serge?
Hey, guys. Serge.com. Can't grip me that easy. I'm still going to be here pushing the buttons, as always.
Buttons. All right, here's a story from Bloomberg. Sandy Hook families seek $2.75 trillion from Alex Jones. Jury already awarded families $965 million in damages. Judge to decide damages under state deceptive trade law. Oh, this is fascinating. So basically they're seeking what? Just about 3,000 times what they were awarded from the jury. $2.75 trillion. Let's put that into context. Here is a list of countries by GDP. You can see here US dollars in the trillions. France 2.77, Canada 2.2. So Alex Jones's lawsuit falls somewhere in between Canada and France in terms of gross domestic product. That's how stupid we have become as a people. I'm ashamed because, look, I'm worried the aliens are watching us, and boy, is this embarrassing if they are. You know, there was this story we talked about the other day that claimed Putin had already tried to fire a nuke, but that sabotage or technical issues caused it not to fire. And I'm like, well, the only solution to that, or the only answer as to why that's happening is aliens. You know, as soon as he pressed the button, the aliens deactivated. Well, that's the conspiracy theory, right? That aliens stopped us from firing nukes. I'm just saying, the whole world, everything that humanity is, we are becoming a clown show. That's how stupid this is. So
I think we can take this back. You know, we can end this easily. Going back to the late 1700s, Congress shall make no law abridging freedom of speech. Now, back in those days, that only applied to Congress, right? But after the Civil War, we passed this thing called the 14th Amendment, says the states now shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. So all of the privileges and immunities of free speech that were guaranteed in the Constitution applied to people like Alex Jones. There's modern jurisprudence as well that backs this up. The Supreme Court case that you're going to want to look to reference this is Brandenburg versus Ohio. This was back in the 1960s, which says that if there's a matter of public interest or an event of public interest, if you have an opinion about that event, that is free speech. So this Connecticut judge has essentially invalidated, jurisprudence which has been, repeatedly upheld since the 1960s. This Brandenburg case has been tried and tested and has been settled case law. So Alex Jones, I think, goes to the Supreme Court and wins. I don't think it gets tossed out on appeal. I think it goes to the Supreme Court, and I think that they look at the Brandenburg case and then they throw this out entirely.
let me read this from the story. It says the family said they're entitled to that amount, 2.75 trillion, because Jones broke a state law barring the sale of products using false statements. They reached the sum by multiplying the state law's $5,000 per violation fine by the 550 million social media exposures Jones's audience received on his Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter accounts in the 3 years following the Sandy Hook incident. Literally makes no sense.
The judge made a huge mistake.
But we're just in this regard, Alex Jones did not do maybe I'm wrong, okay? But I'm pretty sure he didn't do commercials where he held up his product and was like, I just want to talk about, a tragic event, buy my product, and also that event was not real. Like, I'm pretty sure his commercials were entirely separate statements. Mm-hmm. It would be like if, we have BioTrust sponsors the show, as if they would be liable because I make a claim about Joe Biden on the show and that's selling the product. That's nonsense. The law is supposed to be, if I said something like, this water keeps tigers away, $100, Ian, you want to buy it?
Well,
I don't see any tigers, do you? That's
No.
clearly, right? That's what they're trying to go for.
Opinions are always protected free speech, and that's Alex Jones' opinion that happened. And so as long as it was a clearly stated opinion about a public event, he's protected. So he's never going to have to pay this money. I mean, obviously, you guys were talking about it getting thrown out on appeal, but I think that this goes through the legislative process, goes to the Supreme Court. They cite Brandenburg, and then it gets tossed out. But, the left is celebrating this now as if they're going to go after all of these other people like you
Kanye.
and me and Kanye and others and stuff. I don't think that happens. Not with the Supreme Court the way that it sits right now.
Yep.
When he made a statement and named one of the parents and said that they were lying, that crosses the line, is no longer opinion. Is that true?
No. So here's the crazy thing. If I said something like Ian Crossland is a conservative commentator who actively assists fascists, and I've seen him do it, that's an opinion. If I said I've watched Ian Crossland walk up to a group of fascists and provide aid and support to them, that's an opinion. Because what people need to understand is that I've talked with lawyers so many times about defamation and stuff like this. People seem to think that claiming someone did something is a statement of fact when it's not.
But what about you said Ian Crossland said he was 43 years old and he is lying?
So the statement of fact is that you said you were 43 years old. Did you?
Yes.
Okay. Whether you're lying or not is my opinion. Whether you said you were 43 is fact. So if I said, for instance, a conservative commentator, Ian Crossland, said that if we get rid of no-fault divorce, young folks would be more careful about who they marry. Did you really say that? Because I made a statement of fact and a quote. like Jezebel. So as for those that aren't familiar, this is literally what Jezebel did to Ian. This is a false statement of fact outright, and it is actionable. The next question is damages. Were you damaged by it? How much does it cost? Well, we had one user tell us the other day they were going to give us $1,000 a month for 84 years, but then they found out Ian was conservative, so they're not gonna. So we'll have to look into
Sue
that.
for $2.75 trillion.
That's right, 2.75
All
trillion.
the marks of people that have watched the show ever and thought of me in their head now multiplied by, come on. I mean,
So the issue with this is that Alex Jones never had a trial.
Yeah.
That's what happened. If he did, they would have been like, it's an opinion, albeit you might think it's a really stupid one, but it is.
The judge granted discovery, which makes no sense. I mean, she should have immediately ruled it as a free speech issue, but she's obviously stepped into this on a political side.
A lot of people think, and I agree, Alex should not have said stuff like this. It's clearly ridiculous, but he's allowed to. Ethan Klein got suspended from YouTube the other day for the comments he made about Ben Shapiro getting gassed. We said it on the show that night. He should not get suspended. That was before he did. And then I said it again. He got suspended. He shouldn't be. He should be allowed to say that. Someone super chatted already that I'm criticizing Kanye West for saying, well, I don't know if we're supposed to say it on the show because someone said the R word or whatever. Yeah. But I'm like, I said Kanye shouldn't. I didn't say he should be banned from doing it.
Right. But what about the defamation case? Now, in your opinion, what should somebody not be able to say? Like when they can prove damages by what someone said when they're not a public figure, right?
Well, so I understand the public figure thing, and it's tough, right? If we're looking at someone who is a politician or a celebrity and they're active in public life, and we have an argument with them, I understand why we have the Times v. Sullivan precedent that there's a higher standard for public figures. For people who aren't public figures, who aren't involved in this stuff, I understand why that standard isn't there. So it is difficult. My view of this is like what really should have happened is that they sue Alex Jones and said, you've made false statements about this. Alex Jones pays in the thousands and has to issue an apology and a retraction. I think one big solution for a lot of these things is a retraction and apology, but the courts don't ever enforce that.
But he's in chapter 11 right now. Yeah.
Alex already did issue a lot of apologies.
No, I know.
But YouTube deleted all those videos and there's no record of it.
Right.
There's not a lot of records that he could comply with. And this is one of the reasons why, of course, they just threw out the court case and he didn't have his day in court. They just decided he was guilty, said he wasn't complying. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. We don't know the full story of exactly what was happening behind the scenes here. But I don't know, maybe these families confused Alex Jones with the Federal Reserve and think he could just print money out of thin air. And it's just a ridiculous notion to ask for trillions of dollars. It shows you how frivolous this is and how it's politically motivated rather than motivated on the actual merits of this case.
Yeah, I think there's a strong possibility it goes to the Supreme Court. They might just say they don't want to hear it, but I think they probably would because this is kind of ridiculous. So here's my understanding. We went down to Austin, I think it was a year ago. And this was when Jones was right around the time he was held in default, or they declared a default judgment because he didn't turn over all the documents. Alex, I was talking to him and he said, we have given them every single thing we have. There's nothing else we can give them. And he was like frantically and adamant being like, Tim, listen, I gave him literally everything. I don't know what else to do. And they just kept saying he didn't.
Yeah.
So what do you do when they just claim you didn't give him the documents and you did?
Well, he's in chapter 11, which means that in Texas, he's still going to be able to operate. He's got less than $3 million in assets. They don't have to liquidate. He can still keep his employees. He can still operationally. But what they've promised is all the future profits from InfoWars,
which there never will be.
That. Right.
Yeah, let me explain something to anybody who just doesn't understand how businesses work. Profits are a choice. That's it. It's a choice. So they may try and say, okay, we're gonna find out where you are right now, and we're gonna say here's a cap as to how much you can use for operational costs. But that probably won't fly because it makes no sense because costs vary. So for Alex, let's say he makes $3 million this year. I was probably way more a while ago. Let's just pick a number. Let's say 10 million. Okay, fine. They say, okay, you made $10 million. Up. That is revenue, not profit. Alex can then take, let's say it costs him $3 million to run the business. He can then spend $7 million on advertisements all over the country, and that is an operational cost. He can just choose to dump it into things. He can buy more machines. He can build a bigger warehouse. He can build a bigger studio and just keep spending the money. They will never see a penny.
Yeah, Luke's right. This was a political judgment. It's not a legal precedent that's set. It's going to get overturned. Alex Jones will continue to be able to operate in Texas. So honestly, I think that probably everybody benefits from this in the end, because when it does go to the Supreme Court and they do uphold the Brandenburg precedent, people like you and I are going to be benefiting from
We're
that.
going to get the Alex Jones precedent. And then we're going to be like, did you see that court case between, Ethan Klein and Ben Shapiro? Well, under the Alex Jones precedent, they're going to have to.
They're going to hate that so much.
They're like, we got to keep bringing up the man's name that we banned everywhere on social media. No.
In Jones v. So this is what happened in Mississippi with the abortion ban. It was 11 weeks or something. Then the left sued to stop it, and it resulted in Roe v. Wade getting overturned. They could have just said, hey, let's not launch any lawsuits until we get control of the Supreme Court to keep this level. But they decided we're going to go at this and try and fight it. Mm-hmm. Makes it to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court says, nope, Roe v. Wade gone.
Yeah, see, this is why I don't take the black pill, man. I am so on the white pill train because over the long course of history, liberty has advanced. If you look at things on a long enough timeline, sure, have we lost some short-term victories? Sure, but the libertarians have slowly gotten the big wins. Roe v. Wade was a big one. That was ignored. That happened the first time I was on the show last time.
And the anarchists and the people who want to be left alone, we would see things a little bit differently. But you do make a very good point, because especially when it comes to states' rights, especially when it comes to gun rights, we have seen it grow in a way that the federal government has been having a hard time trying to, of course, stop. You look at states where people could conceal carry, they're becoming more and more abundant by the day. That's a huge, major victory. And I think when we look at the decentralization of power, there's a lot of optimism, there's a lot of hope, but also at the same time, I think we're seeing the system panic and kind of get angry and lash out. And I think this is one of the ways that they're lashing out in these kind of particular court cases. But at the end of the day, we're talking about Alex Jones, someone that, of course, is banned on social media. And if anything, this is only going to make him more notable. This is only going to make more people know about him because more people are talking about him now.
So he was a famous guy, but they've turned him into an iconic historical figure.
Literally.
That's the craziest thing about it.
A martyr.
Yeah.
But I mean, more than that. Alex Jones, for a while, was just a personality. He was a guy who talked, and he had fans. If they left him alone, he would have ended up in the historical record as a guy who said stuff online. Now they've turned him into an extremely consequential political and legal figure with everything they've gone after. Now, throughout history, there's going to be precedent historical records talking about the conflict, the crisis, the politics, all of that stuff. Just simply put, he used to be influential. Now he's consequential. That's
Is that
history.
a song lyric?
The left
you should
didn't
write that down.
Yeah, the left didn't read their Nietzsche. They stared too long into the abyss. They fought. They fought dragons, and then they became the enemy. They became exactly what they were fighting against. Yeah. You know who else is red pilling a lot of people? And another big victory for free speech and freedom is Corey DeAngelis's crusade for school choice in Arizona. Winning. Yes, he's winning. Glenn Youngkin in Virginia, the governor's race. I mean, what a blessing that has been. But I honestly think that the school choice issue and the freedom of choice in education is the freedom issue of our time. The pandemic red pilled a lot of people, but there's nothing like telling parents that they shouldn't have anything to do with their kids' education to get people to show up to their town.
That on top of a new record number of homeschoolers also throughout the last few years has been growing very significantly, especially after COVID, when a lot of people were able to actually see what's happening in their curriculum, what's happening in their schools, and be shocked by the utter craziness that's being taught to students. And it's not really teaching students or teaching kids anything. It's really indoctrinating them into the current system. A lot of people are sick of it. A lot of people are saying, you know what? I'm just going to teach my own kids the important things that I want to teach them.
And what I love, too, is seeing all of the former liberals coming along to our side, right? And like how the trans issue has turned so many of the LGBT community. We get, Blair White and so many other transgender people, Sarah Higdon and others who are coming along to our side have been red-pilled because of the extremism of the progressive values. The progressives are out there attacking Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in her town halls. She's already been pushed to the side.
And you see she's like dancing and then sticks her tongue out.
Yeah.
It's like...
Did she vote for funding for Ukraine for weapons and aid?
Yes.
It was unanimous.
Yep.
So
wait a minute, unanimous. Thomas Massey didn't vote.
No. The Democrats.
Oh, okay.
Like there was like no defectors. You look at the Republicans and it's split. But so with a lot of this ideology stuff, There's one really great example that's popping up in the news, and it's this Dylan Mulvaney, I think the individual's name is.
Dylan Mulvaney.
It's some of the funniest content. I mean, Dylan says that they're a performer putting on a performance, and I respect that and think the performance is very, very funny. The only thing is, it's at the expense of women, right? Dylan Mulvaney, for those not familiar, posted his video, got invited to the White House and got a cookie, and the whole performance. And again, I'll stress this. Mulvaney says outright that this is a performance. I bring that up and people are like, no, it's serious. No, it's serious. And I'm like, I mean, maybe Dylan's literally trans, but the character they're playing is exaggerated, over the top performance. And it's, when they say woman face, I'm like, no, that's literally what this is, right? The point I'm trying to make is, you mentioned that even trans people are getting concerned about what's going on, Blair White being a good example, because Dylan Mulvaney's character is a caricature of women and trans people, not indicative of who trans people really are. So you have this person who's wearing high heels while going hiking, and just this very cartoonish character, and it's got a lot of trans people and women angry that they're being mocked by this performance.
Well, conservatism is not confined to one ideology, right? There are conservative Democrats, right? There are conservative gay people, right? So, conservatism can encompass a wider branch of philosophies than most people might think. It's not confined to republicanism.
But hey, Biden really likes Dylan Mulvaney. And according to Dylan, who came out today, he says that Biden said that he watches his TikTok channel and that they're going to come out with an official conversation and interview this coming Sunday. Wow. So that's going to be very interesting to watch. But to the point that you guys are making here, I think it's important to note here that, a lot of the times when people are a part of different communities, especially in the conservative kind of wing, they usually don't make it their personality. Sometimes they do, and it's a little bit annoying. But when you just come to the table and say, hey, my sex, my gender, my choice of how I decide to procreate is everything all about me, it's kind of annoying, and it kind of takes away from the human being. And that's what you see from a lot when it comes to a lot of these social media personalities that just use it as a way to have a fake personality.
I think it's possible we get to the point, I see one of two futures. One where offensive comedy comes back with a vengeance.
Hope so.
And you start seeing, like, remember when Sarah
Richard Pryor's and stuff,
Yeah, I mean, when George Carlin called Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy the N-word on stage to thunderous applause. Like, I mean, it's shocking.
It's true, but it's true.
Yeah, he did outright. And the point he was making is that it was a joke because they're not. Like, it was meant to be absurd. That George Carlin is a hippie who doesn't really believe in this stuff, and it was meant to be shocking and offensive. But you can't do that kind of stuff these days.
No way.
Maybe it'll go swing in the complete other direction, or maybe it will come to the point where woman face becomes extremely offensive, and people like Dylan Mulvaney get banned for misogyny.
But how do you do that? I mean, how do you rally women around that to reclaim womanhood that it isn't some entirely conservative female movement? I mean, are liberal females really going to get on board with a reclaiming, woman face? So I mean, you've got to.
Well, my point is maybe. I'm not saying right now. Yeah. I mean, I don't know where we're at.
I wonder what the psychology is. There have to be some kind of polarizing event.
What I see is either the woman face phenomenon results in people saying mockery of any identity is fair play, or it turns into, we've realized for some time that's probably not okay to mock women in this way.
But shouldn't it be okay though? Shouldn't everybody be up for grabs? I mean, like when you were kids, there was always that one serious kid who told the teacher every time somebody said something mean about him, and then the rest of us were all having a laugh or having a joke, right? Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it should be illegal or banned or anything like that, but people are allowed to have tastes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Sarah Silverman did blackface. Personally, I'm not a fan of it. George Carlin, I'm a huge fan of, but his joke where he calls Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor the N-word, I'm not all about that. I understand his point about being offensive. I think he should be allowed to do it. I think he can make his joke, and turns out tons of people really loved what he said. Good for him. That's not my thing.
Is there a time and place for blackface? Yeah. You know what I mean? Is there, let's say you were doing a documentary or a film about Al Jolson, right? So, I mean, there is a time and place to do blackface, right? So, I mean, the only thing that we're calling out Sarah Silverman for is the hypocrisy of the left, right? Not because she did blackface.
But you mean doing blackface insofar as you're mocking what it represented?
Yes.
Like the joke of modern blackface with someone like Sarah Silverman was that you're sort of making fun of the old ways when these people were racist and it was wrong, and you're supposed to be shocked by it And it's funny because it's deeply offensive. You know what I mean? Like,
Wasn't that what Al Jolson was doing though? With it originally, like he was doing a parody of the blackface at the time.
Not only that, but like RDJ, like Robert Downey Jr. in that movie Tropic Thunder.
Oh,
years
right,
ago.
right,
It was
right.
a joke. It was
Right.
specifically this. It's exactly what we're talking
To
about
poke
right now.
fun at the people who do it.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
I think the Tropic Thunder is hilarious.
It is
and
so
the gag
funny.
was actors who go too far into method
Yes.
acting, and he went so far he actually
Did blackface.
Well, it's more than that. Like his character got like skin pigmentation. Like,
It's a wild.
I just say personally myself, let people say and do and express themselves as they want, as long as they don't physically hurt other people. People should be able to control their own emotions. We shouldn't be policing conversation, speech, and art. Let it express itself. And if someone wants to be distasteful, that is their perspective and opinion, but it's also your opinion to get triggered and angry and emotional about it. So at the end of the day, people's words and actions only have power if you give them that power. And I think if a lot of more of us were more mature about this, we could have a situation where we didn't have censorship. We didn't have, of course, the destruction of free speech and the progression of society. But sadly, we do, because people saying, I don't like this. This is offending me. Stop him right now.
Sure.
And I think that's just weak. And I think that's you
Well,
know,
as with-
a low vibrational energy. That's not good for human consciousness.
Well, as with a lot of things, right? Like the woke people will take like a grain of truth and then spin it around it a yarn of lies. So emotional abuse is a real thing, right? A use of institutional power to emotionally abuse an affected group, that's a real thing. The problem is that when you take that and then you liberalize it and you expand it into an entire web, then you go too far, and then there's going to be collateral damage. So the question is, how do you define what is emotional abuse? That's the problem, right? And that's the realm of therapists to be able to answer a question like that. Maybe you guys know more than I do, but at some point, I hate bullies. Right? I can't stand bullies. And when you see somebody being bullied because of their race or their sexuality or something like that, you want to stand up against that, right? At least I do, right? That for me, I'm not a conservative. I'm a libertarian. So how do you do that, right? Without saying, oh, you're just a woke social justice warrior taking the side of the left or something like that. How do you stand up for the rights of affected minorities from actual emotional abuse without crossing over into larger effective...
I just want to say,
Confront the bully directly to their face.
Right.
Dave Chappelle, I think, said it best. You don't like it? Don't watch it.
Right.
If you don't like what I say, you don't have to listen to it. You choose to watch and listen certain things. And if you don't like someone, you don't like their taste, that you got offended by them, don't watch them. It's your choice at the end of the day.
Remember that viral tweet that I think it was Tyler, the Creator? And he said, how is cyberbullying a real thing? Like, just close your eyes.
Yeah, that was
just
him.
like turn the screen off.
But here's the thing. We're guys. We're all guys. We don't have any women at this table. Those young girls bully the absolute hell out of each other.
true.
And when they're on their social media with the things that they're saying, the bullying in high school, it's not like when we were growing up, guys. It's different. They've got pictures. They've got nudes of each other.
They reach you at home.
They reach you at home. It's an insane level of harassment.
Yeah. So this is a good point, because for these kids, it used to be that if you went to school and you had problems, when you went home, you were safe from what that stressor was, but the next day you had to go face it. Today, with social media and online personas, it's infinity. It's never going anywhere. And so we're seeing suicide. We're seeing depression, mostly among young girls. So, yeah, I mean, I think really it's going to come down to the parents to be like, no cell phone for you.
Is the depression because of bullying, or is it because of the algorithms that perfectly highlight and curate and upvote particular content that causes drama, that causes anger, that gets people's attention, and they know if they say something negative, they'll get people responding to it. If they post something degenerate, they'll get more eyeballs, and the algorithm will reward them for this. And I think there's an argument to be made here, because I grew up in New York City. I grew up in Brooklyn. There was bullying on insane levels. There was a kid who one day wasn't coming in for a few months. He was burnt all throughout his body. He lost his father in a fire. There was a bully calling him sausage face, punching him, beating him up, psychological abuse where you couldn't escape it. There was gangs, there was people bullying each other to the extent where you couldn't even go outside in many instances, because you would get kicked in, stomped on. I got stomped on a couple times. I got bullied like crazy because I didn't even speak English. So I'm saying there always was bullying.
Yes,
but who are you gonna point the finger at to?
Well, so
the algorithm or the individuals?
It's both. It's both. Yeah. But I just want to point out there's a cultural issue at play with all of this. You mentioning this kid who got burned. I got to tell you, man, where I grew up, if anybody bullied the burn kid, that bully would get stomped out in the playground. Yeah. Like, dude, everybody was kind of like, bro, you crossed a line. And that's a cultural phenomenon of kids who had some kind of moral code or just like scruples. Sounds like where you came from, it was different.
Yeah.
And no one, like, this bully knew he could do it. Nobody would stop him.
Yeah, it was it was a bigger kid who got left back a bunch of times, and everyone was afraid of him.
So
he would beat the crap out of anybody and anyone he wanted.
Yeah,
So this is kind of messed up. So when I was 14 years old, my mother passed away from cancer, and it was a traumatizing event. I watched the whole thing happen in real time in front of my face. Just horrible event. Took an entire year of suffering. And my best friend, knew that I was depressed. Like, it was about 6 months or so after she passed away. And, nothing would make me laugh. Nothing could crack. Like, I was just in a funk. And then one day we were talking about something, and he just turns to me and he goes, "Yeah, well, at least my mom isn't dead." And I just went, and I just started laughing so hard, and it broke me out of my funk, and I just started laughing again. I don't know what it was, but I do think, and I'm not trying to be like, soft here, but I do think we are coming at this from a very masculine worldview, because we are told to be tough, be hard, and a lot of this leftist stuff comes from feminism and feminists and women wanting to be soft and wanting to take care of people's feelings and wanting to protect people, which I totally understand. Right? I understand the maternal instinct.
You want to come into the heat? Get ready to get burned.
I agree, but you got to understand that a big portion of what we are opposing here in wokeism is postmodern feminism, right? And that's feelings over facts. Yeah. Right. So we've got to be sensitive to that in order to have a conversation with people who think that we're insensitive and that we're not thinking about that. We're these hard, cold, Randian, unfeeling libertarians.
So,
right?
so what you're saying is that, men are smart, logical, and tough, and women are frail, weak, and emotional.
That's what you said.
You mentioned before that using institutional power
Room full of guys
emotionally abuse someone is over the line, and I agree with you. And I think the definition of institutional power has changed since internet videos become so prominent. Now, a 13-year-old that has 700,000 followers on TikTok is the institutional power. And for a young, unfocused child to let their wildness out on another human is like heavily abusive and dangerous and can rally crowds of people to do it.
So what do you say to him? Toughen up, kid. You got 13 million followers. You're aiming it at them. You're telling them to go and harass them, essentially. You just say, "Hey, kid, this is the world that you live in now." These aren't problems that we used to have to deal with.
They don't seem to work. You can't tell someone to stop on this. You got to ban that. Well, what they've been doing is banning them off the platform.
Right.
And that's I don't know if that's the way to go. Yeah.
When I was at VidCon, this is maybe 7 or 8 years ago.
That's ancient.
I'm out in front of it's in Anaheim Convention Center. I'm out in front. And I think I have my skateboard on my skating, and I hear there's a group of little kids, like probably 12, 13, and one kid goes, "You have 85 subscribers? How?" And then he's like, "I just made videos." And the other kid was like, "I have 40." Like, these kids are talking to each other about how many followers they have. That freaked me out. Yeah. I was like, that's going to warp those kids' minds. Yeah. Their whole world's going to be attached to the number of points they get, their influence number.
Yeah. Well, what I want to say about Ben Shapiro, his famous statement, facts don't care about your feelings. He's right about that, but that's from our worldview. The outside world, feelings don't care about our facts.
Well, I've long said that, and a lot of other people have said that same thing too. Yeah. And that's the more important thing to understand. Ben Shapiro is factually correct. Facts don't care about feelings, but you need to understand the political reality is that their feelings don't care about your facts.
So how do we learn this language, right? This is like learning a brand new language. We have to be able to learn this language in order to be able to counteract it, I think.
No. Look, you're correct, but we know the language. I used to do nonprofit fundraising. It's evil. I think the industry is evil. I realized that these organizations were just lying, and that what they teach people is specifically the language of feelings. They give you scripts, they break down how the scripts work, so they teach you exactly how to speak their language. And you know what? There are high functioning individuals who can build a podcast or a media platform knowing that language. That means they're probably manipulating their followers. Or you can be the quote unquote right and have real conversations, often disagree, and say, it's cool that we disagree, but not try to use emotional manipulation. Really what it comes down to is, on a show like this, if we tried to engage in hard sophistry, we'd get annihilated by the audience. They would say, you guys are liars and it's obvious. Because I think what's really starting to split the two worlds is facts versus feelings. And the people who are all about facts aren't going to be swayed by emotional manipulation. That's most of the people who are watching this show.
And the inverse.
And then it's the inverse. You watch a show like H3H3 or Hassan, and it's going to be all emotional manipulation with very little facts. Hence, the Democrats right now will say, we got to get off fossil fuels and shut down the Keystone Pipeline. Hey, Saudi Arabia, keep pumping that gas. How can both of those things be true?
But do we want this balkanization? I guess is the question. I mean, if you're an anarchist, then yeah, you want to, break everybody up into separate independent republics of individuals, right? But if you want to live in the United States, like, do you want Hassan to come on this show and talk to you? Because right now we exactly.
Well, maybe not today.
Is that what we want? No. I want Hassan to come in here and engage with us. I want to talk to these people. I want to have these conversations. When I reach out to leftists and liberals to try and get them on the show, they won't do it.
Listen,
Never.
Ethan Klein got suspended on YouTube because he said that if there's another Holocaust, he hopes that Ben goes first, which is shocking and offensive. Now, my position, Ben's position, and most people in our space was basically like, he shouldn't be banned for that. He's just kind of a dick. Ethan Klein himself tweeted before that cancel culture is often a good thing. And when he's been canceled in the past, it helps him reflect and become a better person. When he got his sponsors pulled because he made gay stereotype jokes, he said, well, I guess I'm a threat to gay people, so, whatever. And he was kind of bummed about it. When he makes offensive comments about Ben Shapiro, he claimed white supremacists got him banned. I'm sorry, I got to pause there a second. You mean you made a joke about gassing Ben and you thought white supremacists were mad about it? I'm sorry, they agree with you, Ethan. But my point is, it's nonsensical. There's no logic there. There's no fact to follow. He's saying two things that contradict each other. However, in the world of emotion, that doesn't matter. So, of course, it's true. We are in this world where we look for logical consistency. And we often don't understand how they could be trapped in that world because they don't need logical consistency. They need emotional consistency. And what's that? Hating us.
Well, no, I think Ethan was joking and jibing Ben like it was an attempt to emotionally bond with Ben Shapiro.
Are you kidding, dude?
I know how people like that.
You're saying that Ethan Klein saying he hopes Ben Shapiro gets gassed was to bond with him?
Yeah, he's like, listen, fellow Jew, take responsibility for your Jewishness. Let's be together on this one, like kind of thing. It was an emotional way to say that, and it came out as a dirty joke.
Emotional in the sense that it would make the average person want to fight you, I guess.
Yeah, kind of like with a friend, and you're like,
no.
Make an insulting joke to your friend, and they're like, oh yeah, and then you get like a bonding kind of thing.
No way, dude. So that is a 1 times 1. Listen, hold on. Look, when you are a personality that consistently attacks, insults, derides, and makes money off of harming, like attacking other people, and then one day you go on your show and outright say, you hope if it comes down to it, they die. I'm sorry, bro. Ian, you're wrong.
Not attacking other people. You mean insulting other people? I don't like the verb attack used in conversational terms. It's not. We're not attacking each other.
Like these are people who celebrated cancel culture, celebrated the harm to people's livelihoods, and then complain when it happens to them. They advocate for a world of pain and then demand it does not befall them. If I said this the other day, if I came out and said similar comments about AOC, ain't nobody's going to call that a joke. We're critical of AOC. We're not friends with her. Right. He is not friends with Ben Shapiro.
No,
what he said about him was not bonding. It was a direct
it was an attempt
insult.
to bond.
No, come
through
on.
Emotion. Dude. It was an emotional attempt to bond.
It was an attempt to deride and insult for the sake of making money.
Why would he bond with somebody that he argues with and doesn't like politically and is complete different?
It's a natural human tendency.
Can I take an informal poll amongst you guys on the subject of national divorce? Yay or nay?
Nay.
No.
Yay.
Okay, so I'm a nay as well. So we got one yay. What about you, Serge?
I think the U.S. is strong because it's many different nations. Maybe if it was a divorce where it was kind of like larger regions of the United States, maybe.
Okay.
So it's like a larger balkanization.
Okay.
But I don't necessarily know. And I wouldn't be able to say that.
So then, yay. So then that means that we've got to figure out a way to live with these people, right? Bill Maher's been talking about this on his show a couple of times. No, we don't have to figure out a way to live with these people.
No, we don't. That's why we have states, and that's why people have championed federalism.
Well,
because
even
California,
the states have Democrats in them.
That's fine.
And the internet.
What California can do, it's California's thing, so long as we outline where they're infringing upon our rights. For instance, California allowing tons of illegal immigrants to come in, then using that in the census to gain a congressional seat or an electoral vote is a violation of our rights. That needs to be adjudicated. But if California wants to have illegal immigrants that don't count toward their census, I could care less.
How can we live in a country with people who think that we are semi-fascists, right? How can we live? How can we call those people our countrymen, right?
Listen, hold on.
I'd have to side with Luke and say national divorce before we tolerate that.
There are countries in this world that want us all dead. We need to find a way to not fight with each other.
Agree.
War is bad.
Yes.
So the same goes for even within this country. Mm-hmm. I think California is a very awful place. There's poop in the streets. They ignore federal laws. The only thing I'm concerned about is there are benefits to being part of the union that make us strong and protect us from, say, Chinese communism, Chinese Communist Party. But I don't like the fact that when they become a sanctuary state and defy federal law, it gives them federal power. That should be adjudicated. I think if it came down to it, a peaceful divorce is better than a civil war. But I would prefer this country remain together. In fact, I prefer the United States actually expand. Buying Greenland, let's get it.
We need to add more states. Lucas,
I disagree. I
annex
think,
Ontario.
I think. Well, I don't want Canada.
I like Montreal.
No, Alberta. Alberta is where the oil is.
No, that doesn't matter.
I like Montreal.
Yeah, Montreal's not
to me, you don't have to deal with
all of Canada.
Yeah.
But listen, if you guys just listen to me and do what I want, we can avoid a whole bunch of problems.
What do you want, Luke?
I think it's important to prioritize, when I talk about national divorce, what I'm specifically talking about is prioritizing states' rights, limiting the federal government, allowing people to individually decide their own kind of destiny. But at the same time, you could also have defense pacts. You could also say, hey, we're going to protect each other. Hey, we're going to have a strong national defense. If one of us gets attacked, we're going to have an alliance. But the federal government that dictates how we should be living our life, that's just too much there. We don't need all these departments. We don't need all these regulators. We don't need all these rules. We don't need all these taxes. We could go states by state, independent,
That's federalism.
do what you want.
Alexander Hamilton
That's
would
federalism.
would
But at the
disagree
same
with
time,
you.
that would mean a peaceful divorce because we're not reliant on a federal government keeping us together.
No. A very weak federal government for the purpose of shared national defense.
Right.
Yeah, it is a
and
defense
roads
pact.
and things like that for the most part. We're
roads,
talking about
right.
federalism.
You keep the roads. I don't want the roads.
All right,
Let the
exactly.
roads be
Yeah,
private. Let's
yeah.
not have the whole
Screw the
roads
roads.
conversation here because it'll get crazy here. I don't want the roads.
But Luke, the first thing that's going to happen is Missouri's going to war with Kansas.
I don't think so. I think
Why?
they'll. Why? Why would that happen?
Why? You guys must not be from Missouri. First of all,
Yeah.
Jayhawks, border war. We've had a problem with them since the late 1800s. But that was what Alexander Hamilton argued in the Federalist, was that if we do not have a central federal government that puts us all in a whatever the arrangement was, 13 colonies, 13 states at the time, that they would be more willing to go to war with one another, and that the tensions between the states will be alleviated because they could seek redress throughout the federal government. And I think that argument has been proven true.
I think that's actually fantastic, and it's partly how I describe international efforts, or I don't want to say globalism because that has a connotation towards
Because of one world government, if we were all under like Star Trek kind of a situation.
But I'm saying this: imagine the United States had sovereign rights over its borders and trade, but instead of war, we adjudicated things through a court. It's preferable to war. I don't want to see our troops overseas blowing up anybody or getting blown up. I don't want to see nukes fired. As much as it might suck, it's better. So in that sense, there is a path towards.
Can I blow your mind on the global? Can I one thing real quick, Luke? I want to blow your mind here with a little situation here on the globalist thing, right? Would you rather live on an Earth that was a one world government that was governed under the United States Constitution, or would you rather live in a world where it had hundreds of governments, but they were all like North Korea?
One world government with a constitution.
Right. So I mean, you're a globalist.
No, I've often talked about this.
Globalism is inevitable.
I've often
Just
said,
how are we going to do
So
it?
one world government is inevitable in your mind.
Yeah.
It is.
Luke, get him.
No, it's true.
I was just going to say that's the argument I was going to make because what you were just saying essentially, if you're saying, oh, we're all going to be together so we don't fight each other, why don't we just create a world government just like the Rockefellers has called for and centralize more power?
How much would Mexico be improved by becoming the 51st
But this is the
state?
core to my argument, right? There's centralization of power, there's a monopoly of power, and then there's decentralization. I think we should always be striving and pushing and advocating for the decentralization of power, not for the centralization of power. Because when you centralize it enough, you have a world government, and that's essentially the wet dream of many eugenicists and population.
Wait, hold on. You're conflating a bunch of issues that don't need to be conflated, right? Your point about a one world government under the American Constitution is a good one. If it was actually the American Constitution, that's a really, really good thing. The issue here is, you are correct about decentralization of power, Luke, but simply because we would have a very weak treaty between countries for adjudication of border disputes and resource disputes does not mean eugenicists will start massacring children.
Of course not.
Just like you were talking about annexing Canada, right? So if we added a 51st state, what you're talking about is moving towards essentially that one world government. What if Russia was just a state? What if Mexico was just a state, right? Yeah. And then everyone was governed. See, that's why like you have to be careful when you say, oh, well, decentralization is good, because ultimately you could say, well, North Korea is very decentralized, but it's not governed very well, right? So the question really is are individual rights protected? That's what I think is really important. And so the question is when we talk about big government, is it the size of government that matters, or is it if that government protects individual rights? And these are questions that I ask myself. I don't know the answer to that, because the American government is bigger than North Korea, but I would rather live in the American government that is bigger than the North Korean.
Everyone works for the government in North Korea.
Yeah, you're
but
wrong.
This is the thing, and there's a correlation between big governments and liberty going down. So, when you look at that correlation historically, this is why you always.
I don't disagree with that.
The North Korean government is bigger than our government. The North Korean government is absolute in their country from border to border. Everyone works for the government, is controlled by the government, and enslaved by the government.
But there are plenty of objective measures that the United States government is much larger than the North Korean government. Budgetary,
yes, but hold on. You're making an argument.
Employees.
Okay, I get it. You're making an argument about hard number to number. If I'm talking about crime in Omaha, Nebraska, and New York, what matters? The hard numbers of murders or the per capita murders?
It's per capita.
Per capita. If we're talking about the size of government, North Korea is as big as government can be. Just because they're a small country physically does not mean they're a smaller government than ours.
100% government. Everybody's in the government. So I agree.
Everyone's spying for the government.
There's what percentage of the population is involved with working for the government.
Yeah, with the United States, I mean, look at New York. New York has between 30 and 40,000 cops out of 2.5 million just in Manhattan alone. That is very little government enforcement relative to the size of the population.
I disagree. You're wrong. And I'll tell you why. Because if the government of the United States wanted to accomplish what North Korea is doing, it could. And in many ways, it does. The size of the government can be measured. What you said is a subjective measurement. I could take my own measurements and say,
what do you
per
mean
capita is fine. The laws of North Korea that exist are larger.
Let's define what you mean by government size.
Okay, I'm talking about the budget, the national budget. I'm talking about the number of bureaucracies that exist, the number of bureaucrats that work in those bureaucracies, the number of offices, appointed offices, right? The size and scope of the U.S. federal government by any objective measure other than what that government can do to its citizens and the power that it has over its citizens. By that measurement, I would give that to you. North Korea is a larger government in that it can reach into its citizens' lives and accomplish more in controlling its citizens' lives than the U.S. federal government, which I think is what matters, right? That is what matters.
So the problem,
but there can be an argument made that the United States government is larger.
And the reason I would disagree with your assessment is that population size doesn't dictate size of government in any meaningful way. Just because there's 330 million people here, by necessity, you have people who work in government to a certain percentage, but that percentage is minuscule compared to North Korea.
Right, but it's my point that it doesn't matter necessarily what the size of government stands, because you would still rather live in a government that is governed under the United States, in a world that is governed under the U.S. Constitution, than it is one that is decentralized republics, but they're all governed by like North Korea.
But I would even counter saying no one even respects the Constitution anymore. Do you think New York State respects the Second Amendment? They don't. They absolutely don't. And this idea
the fact
of
that they've had to change their laws to adjust to what the Supreme Court has done suggests that you're incorrect.
But at the same time, look what the reality is in New York State. Look what the reality that a lot of people are living under when their basic rights are being violated by the NSA, by the federal government spying on everything.
You would get rid of the U.S. Constitution.
Absolutely not. But I would say government is imperfect. But one of the most closest, better ideas is, of course, the Constitution. But now we have to face the reality. But right now we have to understand.
How can you be for a national divorce and
the argument I'm saying right now is that sadly a lot of federal bureaucrats, because there's so much government, they don't respect the Constitution. The idea of the Constitution is something that they don't even know and understand because of how big our bureaucracy is. And I would even argue that just 2 years ago, we lived under a North Korean type government that went around, locked down businesses and shut people's livelihoods down and made them not even be able to, walk around freely in many instances.
Depending on your state. Didn't happen to us in Missouri.
Exactly. Why? Because decentralization, because states were able to decide what's right for themselves. But if you lived in Australia, right?
But the court cases that came out used the U.S. Constitution as precedent. So it was the federal government ultimately, and the 14th Amendment that many of these court cases relied on.
Let
So
me-
without, if we had gone into national divorce, Luke, how could you have used the Constitution as precedent? You say they ignored it, but I mean the court cases suggest otherwise. And when Alex Jones goes to the Supreme Court, right, it will be the federal laws that he will use to protect him and his free speech.
But a lot of times that is interpreted up to the judges to make decisions that are not always beholden to the Constitution.
Right.
The Constitution is not a perfect idea, but it's one of the best perfect ideas that we have come close to. And I agree with you. We should try to protect the Constitution, but at the same time, we live in a reality where it's just been thrown to the side, and you can't deny that.
Right. So let's say idealistically, if the whole world was governed according to the U.S. Constitution, would that be a good thing?
yes.
If people respected the Constitution, yes.
I'm saying idealistically, yes. You think so?
Sort of. It won't be a perfect, but it's there. It's better
All right.
than what we have.
Okay, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a start for sure.
What do you think, Serge?
I think it's like Ian said. I think it's a start.
I think for one, we're biased. We are all people who benefited from the U.S. Constitution, live in a country where we see its values. There are probably people in, say, China who firmly believe in the hierarchy of the Chinese Communist Party, and they would be like, it's horrifying if people could lie and say whatever they wanted. It would harm the greater. I'm sure they would disagree with us. We're very individualist as a nation. And I think it's actually fascinating if you look back as to why that is. A bunch of people lived in Europe. The people who wanted to stay and be a part of the collective and live under that rule stayed. A bunch of other people, for a variety of reasons, said, I would rather live in a barren shoreline and figure it out. So what happens is you have a bunch of human beings in Europe, and there's the crown, there's the church, there's war and conflict, and many people say, I'm going to stay. A bunch of people, for religious reasons or political reasons, get on a boat. 20% or so die on the boat. They land on shores that are empty and say, I'm gonna make my own thing here. That small group of people had a bunch of kids. Those kids resulted in us. Surprise, surprise, hundreds of millions of people now are staunchly individualist. That means we're going to have those values, and we want the rest of the world to retain those values for one reason, because of how we live and how we think it is beneficial for other people to live.
It's good
absolutely.
like, interventionism, right? This is why, foreign policy wise, it's good to let other countries do it. I believe in liberty,
Right.
but not enough to force it on anyone else.
Just one more argument I wanted to make here, and this is why I always believe that decentralization is the key. Individual rights are the key here. Is like the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is supposed to uphold the Constitution, right? It's supposed to be the checks and balances. But it depends if there's Democrats in power or if there's Republicans in power, what kind of laws you're going to get. And that's not because of the Constitution. That's because of political partisanship, with people being activist judges deciding for themselves, you know what, I like this idea. We're in power. We're going to do this. And we're going to force these ideas onto everyone. And that to me is a bad idea. And I think if we respected people's individual rights and then didn't just go by this system, things would be a lot better.
Okay, here's the thing. So you're in a paradox. We're all in this paradox, right? And this is, we're going back to the Federalists versus the Anti-Federalists here in the writing of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. The Anti-Federalists didn't want the Constitution to be ratified. So when they knew that it was going to happen, they said, okay, well, if you're going to do this, we are going to write down these rights. And they came up with the Bill of Rights, right? So the problem is that the Anti-Federalists didn't believe that things like laws and rights really needed to be written down. But the Federalists, Alexander Hamilton, George Washington, and others, they all said to themselves, well, in order to have a proper law, it has to be written down. So the Anti-Federalists didn't believe that, but they knew that their enemies did. They knew that their enemies believed that. So they said, you know what? We know that if we do not write down these 10 rules, then they are going to take away our rights.
I think
so
it
it
was
becomes
17.
that paradox. Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
So it was this paradox where it's like, well, we don't believe in written law, but we know that they do. And if we don't write down these laws in order to protect ourselves from them, then we're not going to have, freedom.
they made some mistakes there. One of the mistakes was in the Second Amendment, because they originally were going to say that military, being part of the military was not a requirement to bearing arms, because they wanted to make sure that everyone had the right to keep and bear arms, regardless of military service or otherwise. But they were scared that it would be used as a legal argument to end conscription, which was a necessity at the time. So they said, okay, we'll just take that language out. Here we are.
Yeah, the militia, right? It is.
That's right.
So, like George Mason, George Washington's hunting buddy, had something to say about that. He said specifically in the Constitutional Convention, when they were asked about what it meant I ask, sir, what is the militia? It is the whole of the people minus a few public officials.
Yeah.
And that right there ought to be enough to tell you.
It was 17 articles approved by the House, August 24th, 1789. And I think the first was specifically about 35,000 people per representative. And, they...
But how fascinating to have a paradox like that, right? If you're an anti-federalist, you say, I don't think the Constitution should be written. I don't think laws should be written down at all. But legal positivists who were the Federalists said, well, we believe that laws need to be written down. And the Anti-Federalists, knowing that they were not a majority, have to say, okay, we'll write down some laws just to make sure that we're protecting ourselves from you.
Let me read the original Second Amendment, which was called the Fifth Article. A well-regulated militia composed of the body of the people, being the best security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, but no one religiously scrupulous of bearing arms shall be compelled to render military service in person. And they were like, okay, hold on there a minute. We have conscription. We should probably get rid of that. And thus we ended up with the Fourth Article. They condensed some. I think the Third and the Fourth Articles are both the first. The Third and the Fourth are both the First Amendment, and they got combined into one.
An important word in there too is well regulated, because the liberals seized on that, of course, with regulations. But in the late 1700s, to be well regular meant that you were a good shot. Right, not to be controlled, but that you had self-control.
It meant a variety of things. It meant functional. A functional militia. It means your weapons work. It means you have boots. It means you know what you're doing.
Right. But if you were well regular, that meant that you were a good shot.
But the funny thing is, now people don't understand language changes. Actually, no, I take this back. I think the left very, very much understands language changes.
Oh yeah.
And that if they can change the understanding of a word, they can change the law, like changing the definition of woman. It just undermines completely the Civil Rights Act of 1960. I think it's 64, or was it 67? I'm specifically referring to, I think, Title IX or whatever that protected women's rights. If you change the definition of woman to a social construct, then you delete from the law books women's protections under the law.
Yeah. Or the definition of vaccine. That's another one that, of course, also changed definitions. There's a lot of changing definitions in this kind of new Orwellian word play that I think a lot of people are playing into, because they understand that if you're able to change the meaning of things, you're able to manipulate them in your own favor. And the people who control a lot of the language also, of course, do this with big tech social media.
You want to know one of the best amendments, though? It's that, in suits at common law where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of a trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law. $20.
That's a lot of money back then.
I know.
It's like the National Firearms Act when they first passed it. They're like $200 to buy a Tommy gun. And they're like, nobody will be able to afford that. Back then, they couldn't afford it. Now it's like, $200 so that you can get your own.
So I just want to point out, I love that point as the Federal Reserve backfired horribly on the gun control people.
Yeah. Sam Adams, how strangely will the tools of a tyrant pervert the plain meanings of words? Tyrants have always used language to pervert the plain meanings of words, to turn it around to their advantage. And that's exactly what the left does with the Second Amendment.
You were talking about the paradox of
assault rifle.
Wanting to be left alone, or the anti-federalists saying we don't want laws, we don't need these laws, so why write them down? But then they had to write down laws to protect their ability to not have to live. It's kind of like libertarianism in general. They want to be left alone, but in order to do that, you have to create laws that guarantee your ability to be left alone.
Correct. And that's why I don't venture into the anarchist thing. And they want to sell heroin to 5-year-olds.
So you think is anarchism like a sect of libertarianism?
Of course,
that's like extremist.
Well,
no,
anarchists.
No. I agree with a lot of what they have to say. Just not the heroin.
Anarchy means without authority.
Yeah, that seems like an extreme position.
No rulers.
To me. Because without a federal authority or without some sort of overarching
really
authority,
all that extreme?
It's just mob rule.
Going to make me stand up for the anarchists tonight.
Yeah.
I don't really.
Thank you. Finally,
anarchy exists all around us in many ways. I mean, the free market itself is anarchy.
Literally,
the black market itself is anarchy. Anarchy is all around us, and in nature and in many ways. The internet, to some degree, at least it was. It was very anarchic. But it doesn't mean without order.
But let's be real. I mean, there's too many people, and somebody's got to work at McDonald's, right?
Yeah, The world needs ditch diggers too, our friends. So
No, but you made a good point. Majority of our lives is without central controllers, is without government, and things, figure themselves out. Things don't go chaotic, things don't go crazy. There's even entire populations in Mexico's with entire cities that got rid of their governments, and they're living a life that's a lot more peaceful than it was with the government. This is specifically the city of Chiron. Tens of thousands of people living peacefully together, and when they got rid of the government, they also got rid of the drug cartels. They also got rid of the police.
I get it. I understand. But if people really get rid of government, then how do I exploit them to steal from them?
Well,
exactly.
I mean, when you said you mentioned the free market as anarchy. I don't agree, because I think that it's the people with all the money or the richest that are controlling the market and deciding, especially the banking establishment, Bank of International Settlements.
Yeah, but Ian, why are they rich? They're rich because the government gave them an upper hand.
Well, because they
gave them an advantage. They made sure that companies got in a situation that an average person couldn't get into, and this is why we have such big monopolies when it comes to big tech, social media.
Big corporations hate free markets. They hate capitalism,
and they want more taxes.
Yes,
it's also
Mark Zuckerberg is the biggest advocate for regulating social media. Why? Because he knows that he's going to write the laws.
The auto industry and the banks should have collapsed. And then something could have emerged in their wake to fill the hole, and it would have functioned better. But instead, the government intervened. They printed money that diluted our savings to prop up failures.
Yeah. Correct.
And we could have had a better fall-proof system that actually worked to everyone's benefit, but we don't have that. We have another system that's going to collapse soon and impact everyone that much more negatively, because we keep propping up and being welfare queens to big corporations that are truly calling the shots here.
But the heart of the evil at this is always the Federal Reserve. When we lost the control over the power of money, that is when we lost our freedoms, because money was not a creation of governments initially, right? We had money before we had governments.
Means of exchange.
It was always a voluntary means of exchange. But once we created this public-private venture in the Federal Reserve, we gave away all of our autonomy, because it is the power to print. The power to print is the power to destroy. The power to print is the power to control. The power to print it's the central power over all of us. The Federal Reserve is, to me, the issue. I know that we have other issues, education and things like that, but ending the Federal Reserve would probably be the greatest, most revolutionary liberating act in American history. We've done it twice.
I agree.
And we need to do it again.
And they put Jackson on the 20.
I agree it's a problem.
The late 1800s, the free banking era, the Scottish free banking era, the monetary anarchy of the not so wild west of the late 1800s in Grover, Cleveland. It was the Gilded Age. They call it the age of robber barons.
It wasn't,
and that's when you have prosperity.
That's the problem.
But it was the Gilded Age. It was a golden era of American history.
It wasn't.
The left wants us to forget.
It wasn't free. It was still. You were still run by robber barons. Vanderbilt controlled. He decided if New York was going to get food or not, and that was so. We had to create antitrust laws, and we needed government, because an economy absent of government is chaos, and whoever's born into the money controls the economy.
If I had another hour and a half to go into this, they call them robber barons. I prefer to think of them as benevolent philanthropists. These men did so much. Not only did they do philanthropy with the money that they had, and there's still buildings, to Carnegie in New York, to these great men of our society. But you shouldn't tarnish their image by believing the leftist histrionics on this, because this was a great time of American prosperity. Right, the tail end of the Industrial Revolution and the height of the progressive era, as it came in to the late 1800s, the early 1900s, was one of the greatest periods of American history. It was when we had one of the freest immigration systems. Sorry, Trumpers, but it was a time of American free market capitalism, freewheeling free market capitalism. The best resources that you can get on this would be the Not So Wild West. You can get that from Mises, and you can also read. On the Great Depression, you want to go to FEE.org, Foundation for Economic Education, FEE.org, and read the myths of the Great Depression, because we used to have recessions and we used to have bankruptcies. Banks used to go bankrupt. If a bank was issuing funny money or phony money, doing the Federal Reserve is doing, they would go bankrupt.
Right. It used to mean something.
Yeah, it used to mean something, right? And you have liquidation and you have competition. Why do we have one bank setting the interest rate for the entire country? We're all suffering. I was talking to my old sensei down in Old Town, he wants to buy a dojo because he's getting forced out of his dojo, and he can't because the interest rates and what they are. But that's one small group of central bankers deciding that. But you could have competition. You could actually have a money market account that you would make money off of if we didn't have a monopoly power. But it's the communist revolution that has taken over in this country. We have instituted not only have we instituted the planks of the Communist Manifesto, but we've also instituted the German Workers' Party of the 1920s. I won't say their name. We've instituted a lot of their planks as well here. But it is the control of money and credit that is the evil, insidious power that controls us all and prevents us from really instituting the kind of free market capitalism that would lift those people that you're talking about out of poverty. They would have more options. They didn't like a bank, they would be able to go down to the bank next door. Bank of America couldn't cancel, or JP Morgan Chase couldn't cancel.
Right? Let's talk about war. Let's say we get a decentralized, very anarchic system. Not completely. Maybe it's very, very libertarian. Banks are failing, and then new ones are emerging. What about, say, communist China? Very, very centralized, very authoritarian, very expansionist. We ignore it. What happens when a Soviet bloc or Chinese Communist Party style thing starts creating a unipolar world under their footprint?
Do you want to let me answer that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So communism, has shown that in the short term it can have power and it can have strength, right? But capitalism has won out in the long term. The mistakes that the neoconservatives made, the people under Bill Buckley and Ronald Reagan, is that they believed that in order to beat communism, that we had to adopt tenets and planks of communism, right? What was the space race and the missile race, the arms race between the United States and Russia. This was the belief. They believed that capitalism had failed to provide the United States with the type of military strength that was necessary to defeat communism. But if you look at any economic measure of Russia, it wasn't necessarily the spending on the space race or on the arms race that bankrupted Russia. Russia was failing on its own accord, and it was Potemkin villages that were all across Russia, for decades, their economy was always on the verge of collapse. Now, the neoconservatives thought that by spending more that they would tip them over. They ended up being right. But I wouldn't say that one correct fact doesn't prove an entire theory. Free market capitalism, is it a perfect system? No. Is it a better system than communism? By any standard or measure. So can communism show its strength in the short term? Sure. If you force people, it's like, Mussolini got the trains running on time, but where did he end up, right? Hanging alongside his... doesn't end well for you.
Specifically, also when you look at China, a lot of people are saying, "Look at all the centralization. Look how Justin Trudeau's like, it's amazing how they could control their economy at a what did he say exactly? I forgot the exact term.
He admired the fact that they had so much control over their economy.
You can sit on a throne of bayonets, but not for long.
But at the same time, we have to understand China's dealing with their own unique problems. Even though Justin Trudeau is looking at them like, this is great, this is awesome, this is amazing. Bill Gates is complimenting them. They're still dealing with a major housing crisis, with the major infrastructure crisis, a major natural resource crisis,
and
a population crisis, a currency crisis, and their society is literally at the brink of collapse because of the centralization and not allowing individuals to be free and creative and to solve the problems that the central controllers are creating. So again, at the end of the day,
it all comes down to one thing, though. Government is completely irrelevant with culture. So if you had, let me tell you, you want to know how communism could work? If every single person within your country, communist government, agreed ideologically on the core principles and tenets and ideology. So let's say you have 1 million fundamentalist Christians who all follow the Bible to the T, defer to their religious scholars and theologians for advice. You are going to function very, very well. But the only problem is that's idealistic, not realistic. So invariably what happens is communists say, we can do it as long as everyone just follows the rules. Right. And then someone comes in and says, but Premier, 17% of the population won't. I have an idea. Let's kill them.
Yeah,
and then that's what you end up getting, the psychotic authoritarian dictatorship. You will never achieve 100% ideological conformity. So there needs to be a system. I think we've done a really great job in the United States of allowing people of different ideas to kind of come together, but there is an outer limit. At a certain point, you spread so thin, you end up with activists defending conservative Islam in the same breath as LGBTQ education, and then you end up with protests between those groups who are completely at odds with each other. At a certain point, ideologies cannot function under the same umbrella without conflict, without fighting.
Yeah, we need more umbrellas. That's for sure. Like this one person represents 70,000 people. 700,000 people.
770,000
Either way,
people.
the number's insane. One person represents themselves. I can't represent Luke effectively. There's no way. It's Luke.
And one of the main reasons we're facing such big problems here in the United States is because of this centralization, is because of this banking system, because of all the people saying, I am on top of the government. I have all this power. I have all this influence. It's all for me, 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 me. The individual can't solve their problems because there's too much regulations. There's too much taxes. There's too much bureaucracy in the way, standing between the monopolies that are being propped up by the federal government. Because normally people would say, hey, I don't want to be banking at JP Morgan Chase that's financing Jeffrey Epstein. Hey, I don't want to be participating in this larger system. I want another system that works for me better and doesn't create more problems. But now we have a lot of problems because of that centralization.
So here's another paradox for you, Luke, and I wonder what you think about this, right? So Ian, talked about the representation, right? One person representing 700,000 people, right? So in order to help aid decentralization, should we increase the House of Representatives size in order so that people are more represented, a fewer amount of people per representative? Do you think it's a good idea? Would that actually help our liberty by sending more Congress people to Washington,
I haven't thought about it in a long-term perspective. Yeah. Automatically, my knee-jerk reaction is hell no. No. I don't want any of that. But I haven't thought about the long-term consequences, and it's a big hypothetical question.
Well, here's something, right? I think we would have, 7,000 members of Congress if we scaled for population. Mm-hmm. So if more bureaucrats isn't going to do it, what if we whittled everything down to a smaller and smaller number until maybe there was one person who just ran things for us, and then instead of having to deal with elections, we just their kids took over once they died, and then that family could just deal with the responsibility.
What would that be like?
Yeah, what would that
leaders.
We'd end up with Meghan Markle.
I think.
But what if I got a better idea? What if we create an idea of government that is called a representative democracy, but in reality, secret corporations behind the scenes and bankers really control all the shots, and we give people this pretend ability that they actually have a voice and that their vote actually matters, and then actually we just do whatever the hell we want, which is exactly what the hell is happening right now.
This was the Plutonomy report that we talked about a little while ago, came out a long time ago, that basically powerful interests control the economy and the government, and the opinion of the public is meaningless. They did a study, they found something like if public opinion is 100% in favor of an idea, it won't matter about the bill being passed. It's only when 60% of the wealthiest individuals support an idea does it become law.
Exactly. And it's all a scam. And when you look at what the government's doing right now, they're not upholding the Constitution. They're doing whatever they want. They're taking brute force. Anyone standing in their way, they either get thrown in jail, they get audited by the IRS, or they get totally screwed over where they don't even have the ability to speak on social media.
Another paradox, though, but Tim, you've identified something there when you talk about it. When 60% of the wealthy and the powerful people have an idea, then only then can it become law. I mean, wasn't the Constitutional Convention just the wealthy elites of the United States gathering together in secret, putting together a document that would govern all of us?
Yes, and here's the best part. In some of these state conventions, they weren't even legitimately elected by the state. It was people in the state who agreed with independence who elected someone to go down, and the people who weren't in favor of it had no idea. So it is fascinating. But look, if
Constitution of no authority, right, Luke?
Who said? I mean, it was Plato that the penalty for failing to be involved in politics is to be ruled by the ignorant or something.
By your inferiors.
By your inferiors. So for the people who cared and paid attention and were saying we need to fight this problem, and they got active and they set the standard, well, then good for them.
That's the people who fight, the people who participate, and that's what our government really was supposed to be, right? And that's why we have an electoral college. Have you ever been an elector? Have any of you ever been electors? So I went through the process to become an elector for Ron Paul in New York, and you have to go through a series of processes in order to actually become a person who is going to be allowed to vote. And I like that, right? So the Democrats talk about, we need to reduce barriers to voting. I don't agree with that. I like the idea that the people who show up to vote on issues are the most informed, they're the most educated, they're the most involved. The people who only show up to vote once every 4 years are not dictating to the rest of us how things should be. You should have to show up at council meetings. You should have to put your name down on a piece of paper. And government should go to those who show up.
Yeah.
You think that we should be able to vote online?
Service guarantees citizenship.
I'm not entirely opposed to that. I'm not entirely opposed to the idea that being able to govern, that you have to participate or to perform some form of public service.
You're familiar with Starship Troopers?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
the first thing I thought about.
The only good bug is a dead bug.
But I think the idea is actually very much worth exploring. I wouldn't say I'm definitive on it. The idea that service guarantees citizenship. Basically, everybody gets full constitutional rights. But if you want to vote in the system, you have to have provided some kind of service, be it community service, military service.
Just contribute.
Just contribute.
Yeah.
So a lot of people think that phrase means military. No. It means you could be like a lifeguard. It's like
why not?
you're a part of the system to help make it work. You can vote. But if
Community
you're not
watchmen,
involved,
police,
right?
Add
you know,
the community.
And if you're not involved in it, why would you be voting on what everyone else is doing?
Right. Yeah.
You know, so I think that's interesting because right now one of the problems we have is that Democrats absolutely rely on stupid people and exploiting stupid people. Republicans, for a while, did too. The Uniparty was one big machine that exploited the stupidity of the entire country.
Maybe
But now,
ignorant people.
ignorant
Yeah,
people.
definitely.
Definitely a better way to phrase it. Now you have a rising faction, the children of the Ron Paul Love Revolution and others, who are paying attention, questioning what the government is doing, demanding answers as to why it's being done in their name, wondering where their money is going. And this is creating a very serious problem for Uniparty, but it's also creating a new faction of people who are like, hey, maybe we shouldn't be invading foreign countries, wasting our money on this stuff. Maybe we should focus on ourselves. But then you very much have what the Democrat Party goes after, and that's people who don't pay attention and just do whatever they're told
What they
makes
feel.
them fit in.
What they feel.
What makes them fit in.
Luke,
Yeah,
you must
true,
have
true,
really loved watching the MAGA Trumpers destroy the neocons and seeing the new Republican Party, because when you and I were activists for Ron Paul in New York City together from around 2008 to 2012, our greatest enemy were the neoconservatives. We were fighting against the Bushy Republicans. We were fighting against the David Frums. We were fighting against the Bill Kristols. And then Donald Trump came in and accomplished what you and I had been trying to do for years. And now we have the situation where maybe we don't agree always with the stated aims of MAGA Trumpers. You know, the populism does lend itself to a form of Republican socialism that you and I might not agree with. Yeah. But isn't it fascinating now that like our opponents have shifted and that no longer the neocons are a shadow of what they once were. We're no longer worried about Mitt Romney.
And they joined the Democratic Party.
And where they came from. Where they came from. The neoconservatives came in in the 1970s.
I'm not going to say I wasn't entertained, but any kind of political infighting is always great to me, because when politicians and governments are fighting each other, they're not fighting the people, which they're usually doing. But at the same time, you know, Donald Trump did put in John Bolton. John Bolton was also that key person that we were protesting against and standing up against, because his viewpoint was absolutely insane. But to bring it back to the point that we were just discussing here, we look at history 500 years ago, and we look at people and we kind of think that they were backwards because they had a king and a monarch. I think from 500 years from now, we're going to be looking back at the people now and be like, these idiots believed in the presidential scam. Sure. I can't believe they allowed them to get away with this and didn't have personal responsibility and live their lives to their own kind of destiny.
No, hold on. Here's what's going to happen. In 100 years, we're all going to be brain linked in Neuralink in Mark Zuckerberg's Zuckerverse.
We won't disagree.
And then we're all going to be like, everything has always been good.
Yes.
Mark Zuckerberg has always been our leader.
It's the Matrix.
That's a little bit of a negative visualization. I like to be a little bit more of a positive person, and I think we do dictate our own reality with some of the thoughts that we create in our minds, and we should always be positive.
All right, let me flip this one then. It's 100 years. We're all floating around in our anti-grav boots with our brains connected to the Neuralink, praising the Zuckerverse, when a ragtag group of Rudkowskians break into the main server farm for the Zuckerverse and take out the main central server, and all of a sudden everyone just goes, I'm free! And then all of the children of the Luke Rudkowski revolution are like, a great man brought us here. And they're holding a picture of an old man, Luke, smiling and giving a thumbs up.
Stop with the fighting. Let's just have a peaceful resolution and learn to respect other people and not hurt them and not steal from them. If we just had those two principles, life would be amazing. All
right, then here's what it is. It's 100 years. Everyone's floating around their Zuckerverse programs. And then a Rudkowskian peacefully walks in and delivers a crystal. And the Zuckerbergians are like, what's this? And then all of a sudden a pulse of energy goes out, shutting the servers down. And everyone says, you have awakened us, Luke. You have saved us, and we are grateful. And everyone hugs.
Listen, the Zucker lizards are not going to be in charge here, okay? Free humanity usually prevails, and if you look at human history, we have been making progressions towards more liberty, more freedom, more decentralization. I think we need more of it, and I think when we have that, we have human progression.
Luke, do you find yourself now like more in agreement and happier that the more Pat Buchananite style Republicans, the populist Republicans, are more of the majority of the Republican Party versus the neoconservatives, knowing that neoconservatives tend to agree with us libertarians on things like the war on drugs and on immigration, and that the MAGA Trump like national conservative types do not agree with us on immigration. They do not agree with us on the war on drugs and social issues and things like that. Do you find yourself happier now that the more Buchananites are the upsurge, that you can work with them more than like the Romneyites or the?
Personally, I'm not a fan of any politician. I think all of them should have their feet to the fire. I'm critical of all of them, and during the Trump era, I was very critical of them. And just like I am with anyone in power, because I think anyone in power always deserves criticism. And I think the more we do that, the better government.
But you're a market fundamentalist, right? Like I am, right? So we both believe in like the free market, the unfettered free market power.
I'm not as rigid in my point of views. I'm a lot more flexible, especially when it comes to a case-by-case basis.
Right.
Because I think it all depends on the current circumstances. Because when you look at immigration, you also got to factor in welfare.
Right.
You also have to factor in, the tax system we have right now that's taking our money away and incentivizing a lot of this stuff.
So then we can't legalize drugs because people might use welfare money to buy drugs then, right?
No, that's a very, kind of layered argument there.
I got you there, buddy.
No. I'm saying everything's by a case-by-case basis. But at the end of the day, I think I always lean towards less government, less regulations, less taxes, less centralization, less bureaucracy.
Less welfare, less drug laws.
I'm just fascinated by the discussion on the right that is, the abandonment of free market principles and the advocacy of many of these national conservatives.
Look. It just comes down to one thing. The right needs to understand. The laws are meaningless. The culture is everything. And the example I like to give is that you can have a law on the book like you can't protest at an abortion clinic. And you can have another law on the book. You can't protest at a judge's house. But if your culture only enforces one thing, the laws are irrelevant. Right. What are we seeing? Mm-hmm. We had, I think, 11 or 12 pro-lifers arrested for protesting at an abortion clinic. None of the protesters at the judge's house got arrested. That's a cultural problem.
I don't think that the laws are irrelevant, but I think I would agree with you that the culture is more important. I do think that the culture war needs to happen, and we need to be at the forefront of it. And I'm glad that's why you're doing what you're doing.
I'm just saying that
film and
if this whole country all completely agreed on cultural issues, you would have no crime.
Yeah, true.
But because they don't,
starving. Don't know about that.
I don't mean quite literally. I mean for the most part, crime would be dramatically gone. Like it would be minuscule. There would be acts of desperation. But the issue is we don't view each other as neighbors, and it's a question of the morals of the culture. If this entire country was staunchly Christian and conservative, like many of the more libertarian MAGA type Christians, then there'd probably be no crime. Everybody would be more lesser crime, but to an extreme degree.
Yes, definitely.
So I'll put it this way:
without law, how would you call it a crime?
Well, it's not just that. If everybody held the ideology of Jack Posobiec and his family, you're going to have very little crime, if anything. People are going to work, and they're going to try to find ways to get along. I'm just using Jack. I'm using you as an example.
Yeah, but if Jack was in desperate poverty and his family was suffering and starving, and his children were starving, he'd probably steal food for his kid.
No, because Jack's ideology is communal giving and support.
He's in a position to be able to have that.
And that means, this is my point, if everybody agreed on how it should work, then you have a functioning homogenized system. I'm saying it's impossible. So, but the point is,
utopia.
When this country has a culture that to a great degree, like 80% is held by everybody, then you're going to have things where people are all basically in agreement and not arguing with each other. You're not going to have culture conflict. You're not going to have religious fighting and things like that because everyone.
But you have to get rid of other people's religions. That would be a problem.
But get rid of if we're in a place like we are now, which is the challenge we face. What I'm saying is a long time ago, when you had very small tribes, they all agree with each other. As you scale and get bigger and add different ideologies to the mix, you start getting internal conflict.
We have what's called
There's also
culture
interspecies conflict.
It's culture shock. This is global culture shock. This is what happens when cultures mingle, and it all happened between 2007 to 2022. We're experiencing this massive consciousness shock.
God, yes, you're so right.
Smartphones.
Yeah, no, you're right. You come into conflict with people, just by virtue of being around them and hearing their views, right? And people struggle with that. It's difficult. When I came into D.C. from Missouri the other day, it was shocking to go from rural Missouri to Washington, D.C. and to be into this culture. You have to shift your attitudes. You've got to get along with these people and interact with them in a way that they want to interact. When you go and buy something at a checkout line here, you better move fast. You better make your decision right away. But in Missouri, you can take your time. You can hear what they have to say, right? And you have to, when you go to Missouri, you better get along with how Missourians are. Mm-hmm. So you're absolutely correct that this is an international culture shock. The internet has facilitated it, right? Mass communication, but also just mass travel. 100 years ago, it wasn't easy for people of our, of modest means to be able to get in an Airbus and go around the world and travel together. So we are experiencing the long-term kind of ramifications of, these face-to-face interactions that were not possible before, right? Like, because what Tim was saying with the tribes that all live together, they were homogenous, they all live together. But we live in a heterogeneous world, and we've all got to figure out a way to live together, not just here in the United States between ourselves, but internationally as well. And that's a problem. That's why there's conflict, and that's why there's war. I don't believe in utopia, right? That literally means no place, right? So I don't think that there will ever be that situation, that there's no crime. I don't even believe that, like you said, if most people agreed on everything and had Jack Posobiec's views, that there would be no crime. I think mental illness and other factors would involve people. Crimes of passion, cheating.
But hold on. Obviously, I'm not saying there's not going to be deviation and fault. I'm saying there's a lot of conflict bred by people who don't view each other as neighbors. Right. They don't view each other. They don't agree on morality. There are people who believe children should get sex changes and people who don't. Yeah. If everybody agreed on the core issues, then your conflict would be minimal. They would exist obviously because mental illness exists and poverty exists, of course.
Right. I just think people are rebellious. People people just like oppositional defiance disorder. Like when you're this, I want to be that, right? I think that's that's kind of like our childish nature, right? Teenagers. But there's something to that, and a new culture would develop. You'd never be able to create a real monoculture because people want to create a culture within a culture. It's the reason why different sects of Christianity exist, right? Because of the telephone game, everybody's going to interpret what they hear. It doesn't matter. We have more sources and availability of information, and yet we have more misunderstanding and disunderstanding.
That's because you have evil people.
True.
Look, you have people who intentionally lie to gain political power. They won't have conversations. They won't engage. They claim to be socialists, but they buy mansions, things like that.
And there's a lot of sociopaths. And where do the sociopaths usually gather? At the largest positions of power. So I think this is why we need to have less positions of power over everyone's life. Because at the end of the day, the government is looking at people and saying, you, the people, can't be trusted. Well, what's the government made of? The people, of individuals who are not perfect, who shouldn't be trusted. And, of course, a high level of sociopaths, which are located in Washington, D.C., more per capita than anywhere else in Washington, D.C., are the ones controlling your life, telling you what to do? No, I don't want that.
The paradox I have is I don't like representative democracy very much because you can't represent me properly. I need to represent myself, but I'm also concerned with mob mentality and mob rule because if we don't have people in charge, then the mob can switch on a dime from an internet video and go vote some crazy new murder. And so at what point do you have to, or should you give over your authority to someone else?
Right.
I don't think you should. I think you should be personally responsible for yourself. And I think
Grandma
let things fall.
Grandma can't always stay at the farm to make sure that nobody steals her chickens. So she's going to have to grant authority to the local police to be able to do something like that for you. People are going to divest their authority to someone else, and there's always going to be that transfer of power from one person to another, and that's going to happen voluntarily, right? The more voluntarily, the better. But I wanted to tell you a brief story about the early days of the internet. Some of you will probably know this. I bet you, Tim, you will. But talking about misinformation and disinformation, they found that the way to prevent people from falling for fake news in the early days of internet forums was to actually create more fake news. And I wish that this would get more publicity because they wrote about it in Wired magazine, because people would post when they would ask questions about how to, install their sound card or modem or whatever.
Right. You're saying to put the wrong thing down.
They would deliberately give the wrong information. Right. They would flood the boards with disinformation because what they found was that the more disinformation, the more people adjusted to realize I need to be skeptical, and now I know that I need to check my information before I do it because I know that that's out there. That's why I don't believe in internet censorship. That's why I think Alex Jones should be on Twitter. That's why I think, anybody, more information is good, even disinformation, because people will naturally make mistakes and learn
that's
from
why
them.
they're getting rid of it.
I think that has maybe diminishing return, because if a parent's like, I'm lying to you because I love you to teach you how to learn to deal with lies.
What if their kid sucks?
Like parents who tell their kids Santa's real, and then eventually the kid learns through being mocked by their friends that their parents lied to them and it made them a laughingstock.
Yeah, that happened to me. And it didn't help.
I hear a lot of these stories where parents, tell their kids Easter Bunny, Tooth Fairy, Santa, then they go to school, and eventually what happens is one group of parents determines 5 is too old to believe in Santa. Another parent says 7 is too old. That 6-year-old then meets the other 6-year-old, and they start making fun of him, saying, "You're so dumb, you believe in Santa. We learned that a long time ago." The kid gets mad. It's my parents lied to me. And then they're going to be like, my parents play tricks on me for reasons I don't understand. So you got to be careful about these traditions too.
I see your point about learning how to discern between truth and lies, though. If you're never lied to, then how will you know if someone's lying to you, or how will you even know lies can happen?
Well, it's like when amazing James Randi,
he's great.
He used to participate in experiments where not experiments, but they would actually go to tribes in Africa and deliberately trick them, pretend to be witch doctors, and they did it in order to show them that, hey, the medicine men who come through here are just trying to screw you over. So they showed them the tricks of the trade. Remember when they used to go and they would look like they were pulling out some evil from their guts and things like that? They would go and do these magic shows, and Penn and Teller did this all the time in order to show that they were being fooled. I mean, Penn and Teller are probably the most famous for that, but I think that there's value in that, in deliberately deceiving in order to inform and educate. I think that that's a legitimate strategy, but I also think that it happens by default. That's why, disinformation online, misinformation, conspiracy theories, whatever it is, everything should be allowed, as long, other than perhaps threats of direct violence. I'm going to kill you. Like if Ethan had said, I'm going to put you in the camps or whatever
on this day at this time, that becomes imminent when you specify a day and a time and a place.
Yeah, exactly. But otherwise, it should be anything goes in order that people might be educated.
Right? I don't think Ethan should be banned, should be suspended for being a dick. I think it should be allowed.
Right.
He was being a dick though.
But it's and I'm not even that.
I think he was trying to be funny, but he failed.
Yeah,
I think he was trying to be funny, but it wasn't funny.
I understand the point he was trying to make.
Yeah,
I think it was crude, and I think he should be allowed to say it. Sure. And look, I got to be honest. Like, I wouldn't boycott him over it. I wouldn't cancel him over it. I'd be like, come on, bro, and then I'd move on with my life.
There's some weird people out there. My buddy Joe, who's with me tonight, was telling me about this Jewish friend of his, and she's like, I think Jews should be sent off, and he's like, well, you are a Jew, and she's like, and I would round them all up, and I would be the last one to go. And she's like,
what?
No, I'm not kidding. You probably know who this person is, but I won't say the name. But I'm just saying that, like, you ought to be able to post something like that. You ought to be able to say something like that because it's ridiculous. Yeah, well, the best thing is, here's the thing. The best way for us to know who the crazy people are is to let them say.
Yeah, true. How are we supposed to know who's crazy, who's a dick, who's a racist? I want to know. I want to know who's who.
Let me tell you a story.
It's like the bake the cake thing.
Let me tell you a story.
We want to know who the homophobes are.
Let me tell you a story.
Exactly.
I went to Europe, and I was at a protest. I think it was for Count Dankula or something. And I was having a conversation about an individual in the United States. And I said, this individual has said racial slurs before. And this British guy goes, no, he hasn't. And then I was like, it was a passive comment. And I was just like, yeah, when the dude goes on his show and starts saying X, Y, and Z, it's kind of like, you're going too far. And this guy goes, he never said that. And I was like, yeah, he did. I was like, it was like a big thing. They made a bunch of stories about it. They said he was pushing the boundaries. And he goes, BS, you made that up. And I grab my phone, I'm in London, and I Google it, nothing comes up. And I'm like, what? Where's the story? I scrolled down to the bottom and it said, due to, offensive posts or whatever, they've been removed. And I'm like, yo, I can't even prove that this guy said these things. And this guy thinks I'm lying about it now.
Exactly.
That's insane. The censorship actually helped the racist
That's happened to me before too. Yeah, because they pulled down posts and I'm like, hey, this guy was lying about this. He said this back in the day. And then they went and they pulled it. And it's like, damn, I can't prove that this is misinformation because they pulled it down. Real quick.
Alex Jones, when he got banned, they didn't just silence him, they deleted everything he ever said on the platform.
Right. So he can't even comply with discovery right now. But a bigger point to censorship, it helps out radical voices. It makes people more radical, more extreme than they would normally be, because now to speak, they have to go to the far corners of the internet where all of this is a safe space, and they just keep pushing and pushing, the envelope,
creating niches
to the crazy craziest point that they can. If you really want to dispel it, you counter it. There's bad information, you counter it with good information.
Governments need enemies.
Yeah.
And that's why the whole like domestic terrorist, white supremacist thing, right? They fashion it, right? That's why Ray Epps, right? They fashion it. They have to fabricate it if they can't, if it doesn't come naturally. It's like racism, right? The demand for racism has outstripped the supply.
For sure.
I think governments need opponents and opposition. Whether or not it becomes an enemy is kind of like, we don't want it to become an enemy. That's why we are our own opposition.
We're going to go to Super Chats.
All right.
If you haven't already, would you kindly smash the like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, become a member at timcast.com to support our work directly. I hope you're enjoying your Friday night. Let's read what we got. Josh says, Alex Jones has to colonize Mars, then gift it to the families. It's the only way. Or, hold on, hear me out. Alex Jones could conquer France.
Oh my God.
And then turn it over, you know.
You can just have France.
Canada. You got to take Canada.
Mimic says nonsense. If he isn't ordered to pay at least 17 gazillion dollars, there's obviously no justice in this
That's
country.
what he did an interview with Ping Trip, and which looks like a fake interview. It's pretty well done. And he was like, why didn't they just do it quadrillion, man? And he didn't say man, that was me. Quadrillion. What are they waiting? Why stop?
Maximus Rita said, you defend Ethan's threat, not Kanye saying R word. I think both were crass and both should be allowed. It's not hard.
Yeah, it's free speech.
Yeah, Kanye, I think what Kanye said was funny, but it was crass. But I also think it's going to get a lot of young people to vote against Democrats.
Yeah, did you see Pierce's face right after that? That's amazing.
Yeah, all right. Scruffy Knight says the gay cake issue mentioned last night is not complicated. Cakes are a works of art, especially custom. You cannot compel someone to make a work of art, especially with politics opposed by the artist. Simple as that.
I never liked that argument just because it sort of it legitimizes the law, right? Where the Civil Rights Act of 1964's Title II, attempts to make these delineations, right, in terms of discrimination. Because I really do think that it should just simply be a private property issue, not that we need to get into, is this a work of art or that a work of art? Because what you're doing there is you're allowing the government to start to, to make the delineation between what is art and what isn't art.
Sure.
Raymond G. Stanley Jr. says, Tim, a year ago was members meetup. 'Twas a good time. Luke went off on stage. Ian convinced me to be me and drop Turk Longwell. Shout out to everyone who was there. You still owe me $13 for name tags. Well, maybe we'll do another members meetup soon, and we will get you back that $13.
Let's do it. I loved it. It was great energy.
It was fun.
I remember I went on stage and was just like, started screaming.
We jammed, played some music.
Great idea with
People in the
name
comments
tags.
are like, Luke, stop yelling. I never started yelling yet. You don't get how crazy I could get.
AI says, shirt idea for Luke. Where is James Gordon Meek?
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Where is that guy?
It's kind of
happened to him?
It's kind of a serious matter.
He's
I don't know if
writing
I
a
want to
book on-
profit off something like
Yeah,
that.
that one's not
I
funny.
think we need to make,
Well, hold on.
make the situation,
Wait, hear me out. It's James Gordon Meek with Joe Biden with his hands over his shoulder, leaning
Sniffing
in,
him?
sniffing him, and James looking over like,
Too early.
Too early.
Let's find him first. Let's find out what happened to him first before making any kind of t-shirt, please.
well, all right then. All right. Idiosyncrasy Media Group says, I was inspired by you guys to make something new. For the last year, I've been teaching myself how to animate so I can animate an original TV show. It's called Who Killed Mr. Jones? Today we released the theme song and launched a Kickstarter for it.
Nice.
Cool.
Kudos.
I had a joke I wanted to do with Seamus, but it was just too hard to do, and it was Alex Jones and me. You know the song by Counting Crows, Mr. Jones?
I know it well.
I was just like, that
Alex
song,
Jones and me.
tell each other fairy tales. It's perfect. Here's the problem. The song is wild and all over the place, and I don't know if Seamus ever did it, but like the writing lyrics to it was just weird to try and sing because the song's weird
It
as
is
it is.
odd.
I
Yeah.
could definitely sing it. I know it very well.
Go ahead.
Right now?
Go.
Down up in New Amsterdam. There's your hair, girl. Mr. Jones strikes up a conversation. Black hair.
And me.
Computer's on the fritz.
Dancer.
I have no idea what
She
happened.
dances what?
Computer just spazzed out on it. That was weird.
That was
seems
me.
like it's
Ian
fine.
singing.
Bringing the
Yeah,
energy.
as soon as Ian started singing, the computer just started fritzing out.
I'm telling you, we are electric beings.
That was wild. I've
We
never seen
are?
that happen before.
Yeah, that was, I lost control of the computer
just
completely.
like power cycle.
How you
was
like
weird.
me now?
It's probably the government taking it over and house
Yeah,
them.
who knows,
It was me
man.
channeling God's spirit energy, and it'll keep happening, and it'll keep getting more powerful. So be prepared.
Is that
Get a Faraday cage.
Is that an imminent threat?
No, I'm just letting you know ahead of time.
Oh.
The Life of D says, isn't this against the 8th Amendment, cruel and unusual punishments?
Ian singing?
I hope that didn't sound like crap on this mic, man.
It was fine. It was all right.
It was horrible.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Let's see. Samuel Brucker says, they dignify Alex Jones by making him a nation. That's right. He has to pay the GDP of France. Okay,
I feel like they were definitely saying that with the finger next to their mouth like this,
Yeah.
doing the Dr. Evil says.
Tommy Tampon says, I want to be a subscriber for 80 years. Timcast at $1,000 a month, but I heard Ian was a conservative, so I can't. Oh, no, that's twice now.
Wow. Oh, wow. That's a lot of money there.
That's a lot of
Piling
money
up
we
loss.
lost. Yeah, it's a couple $1 million right there.
Add it to the totals.
All right. Teddy Henkelman says, yo, Tim, my family and I are traveling to Arkansas from Illinois for my lady's birthday, and we decided to listen to you live. Can you give Sarah a shout out? Shout out, Sarah.
Sarah.
Thanks for watching the show. We have a chicken named Sarah. She's a good chicken. She's a Brahma.
Happy birthday.
She got sick, but she's okay. We have more information on Roberto Jr.'s mom, Katerina. She had cancer. We were worried it was Merrick's disease or something it's called. Turns out it was just typical old cancer. Yeah. Took poor Katerina at a very young age. It was in her egg sac. And, it's a sad story.
Stress?
No,
Getting
she
jumped by the
got
boys?
cancer. No, she said cancer. Sometimes it happens, man.
Yeah.
We got the chickens checked out. Like, everything's good. The other chickens are fine. But, she had one son. I think she only had one kid. It's Roberto Jr., so we're really worried now, and we want to make sure we don't lose her genetic line. So we got to make sure that Roberto Jr. has many children. Yeah, he's got to be a dad soon. So we have to wait a little bit because it's only October. So we probably have to wait until mid-December to start incubating a batch of eggs. But Roberto Jr. is going to have a lot of babies, and then Katerina will live on through her son. There you go, chickens. They'll live forever. Aaron Heiner says, are you going to talk about Steve Bannon being sentenced to 4 months in prison? We really just kind of went off.
Right.
So
there's going to be no way to split
Geeked
this
out
all
on the
today.
founding fathers tonight.
Luckily, we didn't get into the roads. It was close. It almost happened.
Man, we should, dude. Because that's what the Vanderbilt problem of the robber barons is. He could just shut off access to New York City because he owned the railroad.
Luke, are you going to go as Rhodes for Halloween?
I could. That's a good. I already have a costume now.
Wait, check this out. Jonathan Lenneberg says $2.75 trillion is more than double what Poland demands in reparations from Germany's World War II actions.
That's great.
Wow.
That's so wild, dude.
Yikes, man.
2.7.
Brandon Hampson says Robert Downey Jr. should come back to the MCU as the new Black Panther.
I could see it.
All right. Honkatonk says, speaking from a chill voting for Obama back in the day vibe, the establishment has evolved, dudes. That is true.
Yes, it has.
Let's grab some more super chats. Paul Sikora says, O.J. Simpson had to pay $33.5 million for the deaths of 2 people, and Jones has to pay in the hundreds of millions for saying some stuff. This Bidenflation, man. That explains it.
Good one, Paul.
Ian Kinney says, how do I put in a bid on the flooring for the new place? I do tile, LVP, laminate, hardwood, carpet, will travel, just give me a couch to crash on. We have a guy, unfortunately, for Ian. Sorry. We have a guy who handles everything for us. He's a builder.
What kind of floors are you going to put in there? You got ideas?
I don't know what there refers to. We're talking about Freedomistan?
Yeah.
The
new office.
concrete. The studio room is going to be a carpeted floor like normal, but the ground floor is just going to be smooth concrete. I don't know if we're going to seal it. I've been advised by the skate park company not to seal it, but I love sealed ground, so I'm kind of like, I like it when it's so slippery you're slipping around.
Why not sealed? Just because slippery?
Well,
people
so
slip?
no, because when you're skating, you spin around like crazy. It's hard to get a grip, but I actually like it. I like being able to do like a backside flip and then whoosh really fast, or like you do your 360s by spinning around. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, totally.
I like it. Makes it, and your board lasts longer.
That's true.
So I'm like, I don't know, and the concrete will last way longer if we
You
seal
don't
it
raise
too.
your tail as fast, nearly as
Yeah,
fast.
exactly.
Yeah, totally.
This guy knows what I'm talking about.
I don't like it. I can't hit the punching bag. Keeps like slipping all the time.
You got to get those rubber shoes.
What? What do you mean? Yeah, if you're
in
wearing,
in the park in the garage.
That's
the
not
garage skate
sealed.
park. Oh, okay.
It's unsealed in there.
It's just
Yeah.
oil. Probably leftover oil
it's
from
it's
2
from the
years
cars.
Right.
So it is super slippery in there, though. That is an issue. So
It's hyper slick
One
there.
thing we did was you put a can of Coke in a mop bucket full of water.
Yeah.
You mop it down, and then you get a little stick.
Yeah, we could do that.
I mean, I think Brett prefers it that way, and I don't skate in the garage all that often. I'm usually skating outside, so.
You got a punching bag in your garage?
Yeah.
You guys do martial arts in here?
Yeah.
I skate.
This guy
Luke
does.
fights.
I do kickboxing.
Dude, let's fight later.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, I got gloves, pads.
Hey,
we can
Friday-
live stream it and raise money for charity.
That'd be
It's
good.
Friday Night Fights, guys. Let's do
Sanctioned.
it. Yeah, sanctioned event.
And then, the rest of us will skate. So you guys we'll skate around you.
You guys could do your ballerina on ice.
Will Cybernaut says, Ian, you made a mistake. I love you. Please don't double down. That was in reference to the Ben Shapiro thing.
The Ethan Klein wanting to bond with Ben.
Yeah.
Raymond G. Stanley Jr. says, I feel like Biden now. Ian just broke my brain.
Why
It's not your fault.
Why don't you feel like Fetterman? Is there a reason why?
Man.
John Fetterman.
Yeah, I can't believe people would consider voting for that guy.
Yeah, me either.
Honestly, some of the stuff that he says, I'm like, all right, it's not as bad as the GOP is making it out to be.
Well, did you see the send me to Washington, D.C. to fight to work for work?
Yeah,
You see that one?
no, he's definitely got the Biden dementia thing going on. But like some of the criminal justice reforms that he's proposing,
Oh, yeah, no,
it's
no.
like the GOP is like, oh, he wants to release these people who are nonviolent criminals.
Yeah,
And
but
I'm like,
he did advocate for convicted murderers, and now one guy's actually being charged with murder again.
I know.
Like,
He's a
come on.
Democrat, so he's gonna, every once in a while,
But
a
this is-
Democrat poops out a
I
good
saw
idea.
Cernovich retweeted something about Tim Ryan. I think it was Cernovich. Forgive me if I'm wrong. Tim Ryan wanting to release prisoners, but then the first thing Ryan brings up, the only thing was getting marijuana off Schedule 1. And then I was like, okay, well, I agree with that.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to pretend to hate Tim Ryan because he's a Democrat. I
Makes sense.
think we
Right.
should get marijuana off Schedule 1.
Yeah, that's always painful because like the Republicans still hold on to that stuff, man.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Still campaigning on that stuff. It's like that fight is over.
Pro clutching.
I think we
Yeah,
got to
pro clutching. That's
frame
the-
it as like lift the prohibition on marijuana. It's been
Yeah,
100
prohibition.
years.
That's a good way to
As opposed to
target.
make it legal again. Make it legal. Lift the prohibition. It's not
and then,
working.
And then they're like, oh, then next they're going to want to legalize shrooms. And we're like, yes.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yes, we do.
All right. Mimic says, to quote the great philosopher from Animaniacs, the brain once said, lies are just facts that haven't been repeated enough yet.
oh, that's some dark stuff.
But that's basically the quote, if you repeat a lie enough, it becomes a fact.
that was
just
a Nazi
another way to say
party
it.
Right.
claim. Yeah, I think
Man,
Goebbels.
brain was dark.
Semi-fascist.
You know what I liked about Pinky and the Brain, though? The Brain was a really evil little mouse, but he really did care for Pinky.
He did.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
nice.
That's true.
Whenever Pinky got really hurt, the Brain would get really sad and scared and worried about his friend.
Even genocidal maniacs have love.
That's right. I mean, I don't know. Did the Brain want to kill everybody? He just wanted to rule the world.
Just wanted to rule the world.
Just a maniac.
Exactly. It wasn't genocide.
Megalomaniac.
Not just
He's not Bill Gates now. Come on.
Oh man.
Killian Chapman says Jones shows a precedent that true Americans will need to do a lot peaceful fighting to maintain our natural rights, such as voting this November 8th. I love the show. I've been watching since 2019 when I was shown the corruption. That is corruption indeed, man.
Yeah.
Corruption indeed. Okay, what do we have here? Brian Tursteniak says, hey, Tim, big fan here. As much as I want it to be true, Jill Biden was not booed at the game. That was a fake video. Officer Tatum proved it to be false. I like that you're factual. So the other day, someone mentioned this to me, and I was looking at some videos where I heard the booing, and then I saw that it was reported definitively by several outlets, and so I rolled with it. But I've heard this more and more. I found a different video showing there was no booing. I'm not so I think it may be correct that the video was fake. I just need to go in and verify, and then I'll put an update on the video I did from earlier in the week, because if it's a
did
fake
talk
video,
about
it's a
it.
fake video.
Because,
We did talk about
mainstream
that.
outlets had been reporting it as fact.
Exactly.
Yeah, the New York Post ran it saying Jill Biden booed. I wonder if what happened was she was booed, but someone made a fake video.
Like
Right.
enhancing the boo.
Exactly.
Right,
We
or
were
putting a
saying-
fake boo over it to make it sound really loud when it
exactly.
was actually just like a marginal booing.
Right.
I think what ended up happening was several outlets fact checked it and said, while it's true people there probably were booing her, these videos aren't real. And it's like, oh, okay.
Was anyone at the game in the chat? If anyone was there, let us know.
Maybe. Let's grab some more super chats. Paul Blackburn says, I'm beginning to think the reason why the rebels knew about the second Death Star was because James O'Keefe was able to get a stormtrooper to talk. He's great. Oh, that actually would be a really great skit.
That's a good.
Yeah,
James got to do
yeah,
some
it's
more of that
gotta be,
stuff.
Like a Veritas infiltrates the Death Star.
They have like a secret camera, and then you have like a stormtrooper silhouette being like, Darth Vader is planning to blow up
It's a
Coruscant.
Yavin 4. But it'd be like Princess Leia all sexy, like getting the stormtrooper to talk.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you have no idea the amount of planets we're going to blow up, man.
Tell me more.
Yavin 4 is totally...
That's so impressive.
Oh my God, you guys are going to attack the Revel base on Hoth? No.
And Ewoks are disgusting little creatures. Like, and he's racist.
I gotta say, like, Veritas could do a bunch of funny skits like that.
That'd be good, yeah.
Project Veritas could do a Breaking Bad thing. All right. Hayden says the Constitution is divinely inspired document. It is a beautiful social compact. The social compact has been violated by one side. The Constitution is not a suicide pact. If they use it against us and for their protection, there is a massive issue.
I would love to break this barrier of them and us, because I mean, honestly, we
I'm
are
with you,
government
Ian.
for the people, by the people. We're all involved in this.
Why can't we all just get along?
Track media only, says Luke. Local judges ignoring the Constitution is exactly why you can appeal to the Supreme Court. If you divorce, as it means, you lose that. We've lost the balance, and divorce doesn't get that back.
That's what I was trying to tell him. Track media only. There we go. That's my boy.
Again, that's like one little argument over, of course, the big centralized. But with that, you have the Department of Education, you have the ATF, you have the IRS. You want all of that, or you want your little judges? I think the judges should be localized.
The anarchist says the Constitution has either authorized the current form of government that we have or been powerless to prevent it. But I like to say that the anarchist movement has either authorized the form of government that we have or been powerless to prevent it.
I don't think so. I think when we have small individual actions like homeschooling, people arming themselves, people making their own food, people become independent, that's actions of anarchy that are promoted,
paradox,
that
Luke.
do push out government and make government irrelevant,
paradox.
because people don't need to be dependent on government and make it less dependent on everyone else.
Okay. Anarchy is correct.
Frank says, minarchism is the best. Ben Franklin had
Yes.
it right. The government that governs best governs least.
Amen. No minarchist.
I like the Reagan one. What is it? No scarier phrase than I'm from the government. I'm here to help.
Yes. That's my Halloween costume this year. I got a shirt that says that.
I'm here to help.
Yeah, no, it says government. Just government. And then I'm gonna go around that night and say, I'm here to help.
You really want to scare people? Just walk around dressed up like an IRS agent, knock on the door, and
Oh God, that would be a great costume. Yes.
that'd be the scariest thing for any adult answering the door. And you'd be like, "I'm not trick or treating."
Yes.
And they'll
No,
go, "Oh no."
Yeah, no, you can get my government shirt at my AP for Liberty shop.
You can say, "I'm one of the 87,000 new hires, and I'm here to talk to you about your finances." Oh no. Just kidding. It's Halloween. Were you scared? It was scary, right? You got to be practically scary, man.
I like the IRS thing, though. That's good. That would be really good.
Good costume. Tangent says, shout out to Ian. After countless hours of talking, recognizing that quote didn't sound like something you'd say is amazing, how passionately you conveyed it feeling off was the reason I dug into it. Tangent's the one, of course, who found out it was
nice,
Seamus.
They brought it up, yeah.
Well, the fact that you're like, I don't say the word folks.
Yeah, I don't use that word. I don't
It's like
like
he-
it.
he
James
hates
Lindsay
it.
actually came on the show and explained how it's like, I don't know if it's communist propaganda. It's like a seeded into our language somehow. I don't know if Obama did it intentionally.
What are you
or-
saying about Seamus?
That he's a racist? I'm not saying that I'm not saying Seamus is a racist. No, I love Seamus actually.
Anthony Jones says, Tim, maybe the aliens have hope for humanity because of shows like this. Ian, we need more info on radar manipulation. Luke, love wearing my Emperor Fauci shirt. To our guest, Rock Chalk Jayhawk Goku. What is that?
Go KU, I think.
Go
Yeah,
KU?
yeah.
Oh, I thought it was Goku, like
Kansas
Dragon
City.
Ball Z.
Yeah, that's for a second.
Go KU. Goku. Yeah.
Goku.
Okay, that's funny.
If you really want to learn about radar manipulation, look up talking plasma, and you might be able to find something from military times.
MIZ.
Matt says, Petersen has it totally backwards. Federalists oppose centralized power, and Hamilton was the worst. He was the first neocon along with Washington and Adams. The Constitution is objectively lacking. Look where we are.
What? The anti-federalists were the ones who opposed centralized power.
That's like what it means.
Yeah.
Anti-federalist?
Right, anti-federalists. They were against the federal government. They were against the creation of the Constitution. The Federalists were the ones who wanted to create the
But I
Constitution.
thought,
the central
it was
bank.
the anti-federalists that wanted the Bill of Rights.
Yes, but they didn't. Well, they didn't want the Bill of Rights. They wrote the Bill of Rights because they're like, we know that you guys are going to write the
Right.
Constitution and you're going to write the laws. We need to slip this in here to make sure we still have rights protected.
Cal L says, the Founding Fathers actually give a blueprint on how to dismantle the government without due process through invasion step by step. The White House announced on 9/12 they're using a tech to do it.
Whoa.
What does that refer to?
Yeah. More info, please.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's something missing there, huh? Christos Aretikos says, as a Canadian in Montreal, I second the motion for United States and Provinces of America, CAUS, give me the flags, of the Great North American Republic. Glory to Timcast and friends. Have you guys watched the Electric Dreams episode, Others? Kill All Others?
Have not.
You mentioned it, dude. It sounds awesome.
Watch it, man. You guys, you're
Electric
missing
Dreams.
out. Yeah, Electric Dreams it's on Amazon, but it's like Philip K. Dick stories, and there's an episode called Kill All Others. It's brilliantly done. Everyone who watches this show would absolutely love that episode. There's a guy, he's chilling on his couch watching the debate, and it's like a single candidate running for office. There's no real election. And she gets asked by an interviewer, like, well, so tell me, what are your plans when you become the president? And the candidate, she's like, well, first we need to totally gut these schools because they're a huge problem. Kill all others, of course. And then obviously the economy is in serious trouble. And then he goes, whoa, what did she just say? And then he plays it over and she keeps saying, like she says it. And then the interviewer he's like, honey, come in here, listen to this. And the interviewer goes, whoa, that was very controversial. I can't believe you would say that. You want to gut the schools. Now, a lot of people, and he's like, what's going on? Then he's asking his people, like his friends at work, and there's like only a few people there. And he's like, can you believe she said that? And they're like, I don't know, man. I don't watch that political stuff. And then what happens is, as the time goes on, he eventually is like driving to work with his wife. And then he sees like people chasing a woman who's screaming, and they're like, get her, she's an other. He sees an ad that says kill all others. He's on a train, and then he sees billboards for it. And then eventually they're like, why are you defending others? Are you an other? And he's like, no, I just don't understand why you're doing it. Like, he's another. And then, you get where it goes.
We see this happening. And,
it's such a good episode.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
that sounds good.
What's the show called?
Electric Dreams
from 2017, sci-fi.
Yeah.
Only one season.
The whole season was great. I liked it. Philip K. Dick stories. But I think that was like the last one. I watched it and I was flabbergasted they made it.
10-episode.
I was like, this explains everything that's going on exactly with cancel culture and the woke left.
It's from a book, The Hanging Stranger.
It's good stuff, man.
Philip Dick.
It's a good episode.
Edited.
You should definitely check it out. Yeah, and the reason I brought it up was because Christos mentioned Canada and Montreal. In the episode, they live in Mexiscan. And it's the North American Unified Body or whatever.
That also happened in Fallout 3, I think. Like, in the Fallout story, didn't Canada and Mexico join the U.S.?
I don't know. I think like the U.S. may have annexed Canada or something like that because they needed oil, and then China invades Alaska or something.
Aliens are attempting to take over. He tries to save everyone else, but dies trying to protect everyone.
In which one?
Well, the book that it's based on. The Hanging Stranger.
Well, it's 12 different, and it's an anthology series.
Right.
So you may be referring to one episode.
Electric Dreams, yes.
Yeah, so I think there's 12 episodes, and they're all individual stories.
I see, because I'm looking at Cranston, Steve Buscemi, Terrence Howard, so they're all stars in different episodes.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's kind of like Twilight Zone kind of thing.
Raymond G. Stanley Jr. says, dude, love the ammo can.
Yeah, that's my buddy Will Perry. He makes these clean ammo cans. He made your... he's a big fan from Missouri.
It's a 50 BMG ammo can.
Yeah. Timcast, news, politics,
and,
culture.
I thought that was pretty cool.
Nice gift.
Austin?
Huh?
I want one.
Was that?
Did you bring that in with you?
Yeah.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, my buddy Will Perry wanted to give you a gift. He's a huge fan. We got a lot of fans in Missouri. Every time I go on, like all my Missouri just lights up because they love Timcast out there. So Will gave you this. He's got a company.
Appreciate it, man.
Where's mine? What am I? Chopped liver here?
Yeah,
I like ammo.
I made a beautiful little George Washington Buddha that from my shop, and I made this myself. So you can get that on my.
All right. Ben D says, breaking Biden student loan frozen by federal judge. I saw this video. Apparently, there's a commercial that I don't know if Biden's putting out where it's like a song about getting 10K in your pocket, and it shows like jeans and it says 10K flashing and like people putting money in their pocket, something like that. I'm like, dude, they're just buying votes.
Yeah, basically.
That's so insane.
Just
man.
like he did with the marijuana declaration,
Yeah, right.
which doesn't affect anyone.
The Marshall
6,500 people are affected.
The
and they're
Marshall
like-
Not by
Project.
Biden.
The Marshall Project said not a single person
Yeah.
will be released from prison because of this.
Yeah, most people in prison are for trafficking, not for possession. No one's in prison, federal jail
prison.
for possession.
Right.
Yeah.
Not a single person.
Yeah.
But then people are like, yeah, but past records. No.
Now the big announcement was going to be the descheduling because rescheduling.
He promised that, but he hasn't delivered any of that.
The reason why
And he
they
won't.
said they couldn't do that is because it's a Schedule 1 drug. They can't reschedule it because it's Schedule 1.
It's crazy.
It's the
Isn't that
reason
weird?
is the answer.
Yeah,
It's
there's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And a lot of big industry.
We just need to change the culture.
Oh,
And
yeah.
once everybody believes weed should be legal, it'll be legal even when the law is
Like opiates, if you want to get someone off
That sounds like
opiates,
an anarchist idea there. That doesn't sound very minarchist of you there.
that was a Tim Pool idea from earlier
that
on.
sounds like a
change the culture.
All right. Tim never reads my super chat says,
Oh.
Great show. Austin Petersen is on point as usual. Also, thanks, Tim, for reading the original Second Amendment as first written. I'm tired of liberals purposefully misinterpreting it all the time.
That was cool. And thank
That's
you.
right.
Appreciate that. Tim never reads my super chats.
That's right.
That's a great name.
Yeah, good name.
Herman Acosta says big businesses love laws and regulations. It prices out people from being able to afford to start a business, effectively pulling up the ladder behind them.
Yep.
Herman Acosta, you're my boy.
Yep. Okay, what do we got here? Callan Shaw Indie Game says, idea. Each vote is multiplied by how many votes we cast since the last time that office was elected. If you vote every year, your Senate vote is worth 6. POTUS is worth 4. Only every 4 years and counts less. That's interesting.
That's kind of along the lines of what we're talking about there. People think that because they vote every 4 years, that they should have, they should have a say. But the people who show up to the town councils, the people who show up to the meetings, the electors who actually engage with campaigns, those people were always supposed to have more of a say.
You know what? Maybe here's an idea. Every time you go to a local election, you receive a vote voucher. And then on general election day for like governor or whatever, those vote vouchers count as votes.
Or just how about if you just own property? How's that?
Yeah. Only if you're a white male who owns property, right? No, but the idea here is if you participate in all your local elections, when you go to vote at the general higher level, you have more say than someone who's ignored the whole process.
Or how about if you're a net taxpayer?
Yes.
If you're
which is only the 1%.
Yeah, if you're a net taxpayer.
Basically.
There you go.
I think the net taxpayers are only in the top 20%.
what's the net taxpayer?
So everybody here pays taxes, but on average, you receive more tax benefits than you pay into taxes. So I think, what is it? Everyone receives like 50 grand. Mm-hmm. So unless you've paid more than $50,000 in taxes, you're not a net taxpayer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then you gotta add that only 48% of people actually pay into taxes?
Yes.
That's crazy.
Oh, yeah. The compliance rates have been much lower, actually. It was like during Eisenhower's years in the 1950s, where the top marginal tax rate was like 91%. And the liberals were like, we've had much higher tax rates back in the past. But nobody paid it. Nobody paid the tax, those tax rates. Right? Like they just didn't pay their taxes.
Literally.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the higher, it's just the Laffer curve, right? The higher you tax, the less compliance you get. Most money you
But
get.
also, it's the less actual revenue you generate, especially if people have the opportunity to leave your jurisdiction and trade elsewhere. That's people don't understand this, man. They don't get it. All right, everybody. Let's see. Maybe we'll try and grab one more. Ghetto Man says just ordered every documentary on Infowars. Do you mean from Infowars? On. There's an extra E in there. On Infowars though, that means other people made it. Got to support the man who first informed me how corrupt our government is. And here's 20 for talking about how absurd the whole thing is. Well, there you go, man. All right, everybody, if you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, become a member over at timcast.com to support our work directly, and watch all of our members-only shows like the Timcast Uncensored IRL show. Check those out. Plus Cast Castle. The last episode was really, really fun to make. And you can follow the show at Timcast IRL. You can follow me at Timcast. Austin, do you want to shout anything out?
Yeah, please check out my new morning talk show, the Wake Up America show. Subscribe to me on YouTube at AP for Liberty. I'm AP for Liberty everywhere, but that's a great place to watch the show. So the Wake Up America show, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central Time. So if you subscribe to my YouTube at AP for Liberty, you'll find me. And if you want to get any of my awesome little Buddhas that I make myself by hand, you can check out the AP for Liberty shop, apforlibertyshop.com. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate you having me back. It's awesome.
Yeah, Austin, this was great. Thank you so much
it's
for
good
coming.
to see you again, man. It's been years.
Maybe one day we'll believe in freedom, and maybe one day you'll stop talking about how you love and need government. But meanwhile, I enjoyed the conversation, and it was awesome. My website is lukeuncensored.com. I got a bunch of stuff there, forum, merchandise, masterclasses. I did a video there recently about 2 things that I'm doing right now in all of this craziness. lukeuncensored.com. Hope to see you there after this video.
I agree. Austin, thank you for being the spurs in Luke's butt, because I like to watch him run. He's a fast man horse. Boy, did that joke fall flat. Bye, guys. I'm not going to be here on Monday. I'm taking the weekend off. I'm going to go spend some time with family. Hopefully you have the opportunity to do the same and take advantage of it. And I'll see you Tuesday. Get in touch with me online if you want to be in Crossland.
And I am Serge.com. I will be in the chats maybe a little bit tonight. We'll see how that goes. Was a good one. So yeah, thanks, man.
Thanks for hanging out, everybody. We got a bunch of clips coming up throughout the weekend. We've got a bunch of stuff on the website. Check it out, and we'll see you all next time.
See ya. Cheers.